You want to be there. You know you do. Don't lie, darling. It's okay. I know what you're thinking when you look up at that splendorous place atop the mountain. I know what fills you, spurs you on, fuels your dreams. You're obsessed with being chosen. Everyone is. This land you thirst for has loomed at the top of the mountain in Metopia for as long as you can remember. But for most of the year, it's covered in fog, its color changing with each passing day as if it's a gargantuan mood ring. You begin your morning staring at the fog, longing for the fateful evening when it will turn a golden yellow and then finally, like a push-up brassiere, lift. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another meeting of the St. Balasar University English Club. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Jay.
And today we have a really, really exciting meeting. This is probably like the most famous person that we've ever had submit something to the club. We've had Lanny Serum, we've had Alex Astor, we've had a lot of people with Wikipedia articles before, but I don't think even the illustrious Ben Shapiro can come close to the notoriety of one Miss Tyra Banks, who has written what I can only describe as a YA fantasy dystopia extravaganza known as Modelland.
This is like a 600-page sugar rush of a novel. It's I just don't even know how else to describe it.
It feels like a fever dream. It feels like a nightmare. Any of like the stereotypical little cliched phrases you can say for something being completely impossible to parse completely applies here. I was not expecting how long this book was. It is freaking massive, and it manages to fill in every nook and cranny with literary goodness.
It's absolutely interminable and incessant, this novel. Kind of sounded like Lauren Roberts there, and I didn't mean to.
It's probably some of the most fun I've had reading a book since even Empress Theresa, just by virtue of how off-the-wall things get and what a deep, deep reflection this is of a very specific person's very specific life experiences and worldview. And It offers so much upon scrutiny. This is literature, everybody. Tyra Banks and her ghostwriter have made just classic literature.
I just went in completely uninformed.
Yeah.
And there were a couple of passages that suddenly felt like they were written by somebody else. Just like the tone was slightly different and the diction changed a little bit. It's like almost imperceptible, but it tended to happen in like little bursts. And so I was starting to think like, there must have been some advisement or like somebody else had a hand in this, a very direct hand. But I do think it's mostly her because it's very idiosyncratic or else the ghostwriter is really, really good at sounding like her, except for a few slip-ups.
Yeah, this is like ghostwriter / neutral. They must have worked in freaking lockstep because, man, does this present a cohesive vision.
That it does. It's internally consistent. Say what you will about the shape that it takes in the end. It is a recognizable shape. Right. There's a goal. It buttresses itself. You may not like buttresses, but it does have them. I would like to make English Club history tonight with you. Is that all right?
I have no idea what that entails, but I'm down for whatever at this point.
So I would like to run by you a piece of original work that I've composed inspired by the events of Modelland.
Okay.
As you know, and as we will all soon be blessed to know, one of the main characters of this novel is in fact a poet, allegedly. So I wanted to do right by her and write a little lyric of my own. How does that sound?
I cannot wait.
So it's an experimental book, and so I thought, I would experiment as well. So I really want your genuine thoughts on this. It's written in rhyming quatrains. It's also not completely finished.
Okay.
So I'm curious to see what you think once I've read my little excerpt here. All right.
I'm ready.
Hey, it's Tyra me running in the NY street with 4 chicks in green, and they all look at me. They are running for their life. Their beauty is in strife, running from this wasteland and back to Modelland. Can you survive Modelland? Can you survive Modelland?
Do you think that maybe I could get this published?
I think that a lot of people would be very interested in this.
Well, that's encouraging to hear.
You'll be the, what do
I
they
worked really hard
describe
on it.
CL as? Like the slam poet that everyone, even the most snooty of critics, just loves to listen to. I'm sorry, I'm in a state of shock after hearing that. Anyways,
well, I mean, I'm glad that it evoked an emotional response. You experienced the lyric moment.
I did. I experienced something. Well, I guess you don't anymore after what just happened, but if you happen to like what we do and want to support us, our channel, we have channel memberships and Ko-Fi memberships in the description of this video. All members get early access to our content, as well as Not an Audiobook, A Crown of Starlight by Kate Corain companion podcast, as well as just other random stuff that we decide to throw out here and there. Members of the Order of the Orb Fox get to vote for what book they want next in the English Club podcast. So, Jay, now that we're all seated in a weird circle and we've rearranged all of the desks so it feels very neutral and new age for this critique group, I'm pretty sure that's what we used to do in actual critique group. But before we get into the summary itself, I have to give a preface in hopes of helping you, fellow club members, decide whether this is a meeting that you guys want to attend.
Yeah.
Forgive me for pretty much reading my Goodreads review, but follow me on Goodreads at SBU_Andrew. Tyra Banks was the first Black woman to be featured on the covers of several prominent magazines. She was one of the first Black supermodels. She was a Victoria's Secret angel. To say nothing of the normal toxic fixation on physical appearance that comes out of the industry of modeling, I just cannot fathom what she must have gone through. The bigotry that she's either experienced herself as a Black woman or seen used around her to other people of different groups. Yes, Tyra Banks is rich and famous. Yes, she pretended to have rabies that one time, and that's kind of weird. But I really just cannot imagine that at least her early career was very kind to her. I mean, no matter what you think of Tyra Banks, she must have seen some shit. And that shit is depicted here in Modelland. And while I can't say that the depictions of these things are endorsements, they're largely presented without commentary, almost as if they're just taken for granted, which to me at least creates a discomfort in this book that I find makes discussions pretty thorny. I have to reiterate to you that I'm saying this out of respect to you, the viewer, and not making some kind of accusation against Tyra Banks. I really, really, really do not want to conflate depiction with endorsement. Tyra Banks can and should use speculative fiction to talk about how terrible the modeling industry is without accusations of endorsing any of the ugliness that comes with it, especially given that this is supposed to have been book one in a larger series. Me making that accusation against Tyra Banks in Modelland would be like me saying that The Hunger Games 1 endorses child gladiator fights because that book doesn't end with the games being dismantled. As uncomfortable as it is, we have to first understand that we are dust before we decide what to do in the meantime. But I also can't say that I'm okay with how blasé some of it feels. And obviously, upsetting things being ingrained in the fabric of the novel means that it is impossible at times to gloss over. Of course, we at SBU, we're not here to shock you. We're not necessarily going to dwell on the more unsavory elements here, but we want you to know that they are there, they are pervasive, and it does not resolve in the text. So I just say all of this to mean just consider this a content warning for anything related to body image issues, eating, sexuality, gender politics, race and ethnicity. If that's something that you feel like you don't want to deal with, this may not be the club meeting for you.
This is definitely a hurt people kind of moment. Tyra Banks, I think, is someone. I know it's like a cliche, but I think it like I think it conveys the right idea. Like, Tyra Banks is somebody that, like you said, has endured a lot, and I think some of that she's attempting just to process in this novel as opposed to comment on, and that causes her not to actually engage with it as much as she has a responsibility to do once she writes it. So I think that at once it is true that she has endured a lot of bigotry, and she also has perpetuated a lot of bigotry. And those two things, they just exist side by side. It's an incomplete picture of her career to mention one and not the other. And we'll mention it because as a critique group, it has a bearing on how the book feels to read, but we also won't dwell on it because we also want to have a good time here.
Right, absolutely. And you really can never get an answer to this without literally interrogating Tyra Banks and her ghostwriter line by line. Again, I do wonder how much of this was supposed to be just presented to be ultimately destroyed in book 2, 3, and beyond, but we will never know. So anyways, just I trust you guys can make that decision for yourself about whether this is for you. And with that context, we will move on to the actual summary, which I am dreading. Because where the hell do you even start, dog? Okay. So, very broad strokes. Modelland is basically Candide meets Hollow Knight Silksong with a dash of Here Comes Honey Boo Boo. I mean, I've never actually read Candide, but it feels like what I was told that Candide was like in middle school, high school English. It's this ridiculous group of characters satirizing something that the author has a personal issue with. Modelland is a silly tale of a dystopian society with a quasi-religious fixation on fashion.
Andrew, you want to know how I know that we were both infected by Yellfest?
How do I know that?
Even though you graciously decided to take the summary for this one, I wrote a very, very short summary just for myself.
Yeah.
I led that summary with Modelland is X meets Y meets Z.
Wait, what was your X, Y, and Z? Hold on. What was your X, Y, and Z?
I actually had 4. It was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory meets Cinderella meets Oliver Twist meets A Wrinkle in Time.
That's also accurate. That's so funny. That's what's very interesting about that format of pitching is that you can really put anything there and you'll be like, oh yeah, I do understand what you mean by that.
Yeah, especially if you've read it.
Right. So I guess it's not really good to just pitch it dry to someone. But anyways, there are 2 narrators. One is this like Greek chorus italic segment that communicates in fashion metaphors and uses the word darling with an H all the freaking time.
Every time that voice cuts in to interrupt a chapter or to introduce a chapter, I start hearing like the intro music from Disney's Hercules because it feels like the muses are about to start singing something.
But then the bulk of the book is a more traditional narrative style that uncannily just feels like the Greek chorus. It's still inflected with those quirks, just not to the same degree. Also, the Greek chorus, the italic segment, is isolated to the first couple and last couple chapters. If that sounds lopsided and weird and uncannily like there's only one narrator, I've made my point correctly. But yes. I don't know. I digress.
It's actually, the narration is so homogenous even across these allegedly different voices that I would contend that there is a third narrator that cuts in to introduce a couple of chapters in the middle of the book, because it's a narrator that talks like the italicized narrator, but it isn't separated off from the text of the beginning of the chapter, and it doesn't have quite as much of an affect on it. Like, it doesn't say darling quite as much, but it's also definitely not the narration that normally gives us Tookie's perspective. But it sounds so much like both without being either one that it's like, it feels like you're phasing between alternate versions of this book. Like, there's different realities where different versions of Modelland overlap and they each have like a different narrator and you're reading all of them at once.
You could say it's a spectrum. You know, they just go back and forth from darling to conventional book narration. So this is a YA fantasy dystopia. So just say it with me. Tookie de la Creme, like most girls, has always been different, but not like the others. So,
Andrew, does her society have like cool factions and stuff?
Yeah, there's actually 2 factions. You can work in a factory until you die, or you can be a model. And those are your 2 options.
Oh, that's like America in 2025. Amazing.
She's pretty but not stunning, and there's all of these little things that she doesn't like about herself. She's gangly, her hair is too hard to style, her eyes are too far apart, and she has heterochromia. You could say, Jay, that the one thing separating her from beauty is a millimeter of bone.
You could say that. That would be an accurate description.
One could say that.
I don't know why you would use that particular phrase, but you are free to do as you will.
Regardless of any implications, she goes to the Bangle, Bauble, and Bead Institute, otherwise known as B3, which is a converted factory that spews toxic gas periodically for no reason. This is the shittiest city. Ilia's the shittiest polis, but this is the shittiest city.
Yeah.
I actually love Tookie's introduction, unironically. So she's laying in the middle of this hallway, spraying whipped cream into her own mouth because it's her favorite food, and she's what she calls, a forget-a-girl. She just is so unconventionally attractive and plain that nobody in this vapid society obsessed with physical attractiveness even notices that she exists. So she just lays in the hall and skips class.
People just like trip over her legs at school when she lays down in the hallway. They just don't even see her.
Right. So this is called SPLD, SPLD, silent protest by lying down, which again is unironically kind of fun. Like, it's a very interesting combination of pathos and aspirational stuff here. Like, who hasn't wanted to be invisible and skip class before? You know what I mean? But anyways,
totally get it. It's also like a convincingly teenage thing to do.
Yeah. She definitely feels like a teenager. I'll give you that much. Tookie is a classic high school blank slate narrator. I don't hate her, but her only personality traits are being nice and being insecure about her body, but only then very slightly, which I just find really disappointing because at random we learn all of these cool things that she does. There's the thing about whipped cream, which isn't cool, but it's an interesting character quirk. She speaks every terrestrial language, like that guy Xiaoma NYC, for no reason. She just learned them. We don't learn how or why or by what means, but she speaks every language. And then she writes in a journal known as the TMJ, or T-Mail Jail, in the form of letters to certain people in certain languages in different ink colors, which just feels like something that a new age LA therapist would tell her very rich client to do as part of their CBT. So she does a lot of these cool things, but it's not very fun to be in her head. It's just kind of a bit weird dialectic. So I guess it's dialectic behavioral therapy, not cognitive. But anyways.
It's very conspicuous how plain her narration is, especially given how quickly things are going to accelerate. And then how they will never, ever, ever, ever even think of decelerating. And she'll just be kind of telling you straight up what happens, but not in like a deadpan comedy way, just like in not a very interesting way.
Right. In this hopeless world where you go to school to learn what factory you should work at when you graduate, and your school is also a factory, the only hope for young people, especially young girls, is the Day of Discovery, also known as TDOD. It is an event disproportionately hyped in comparison to how cool it actually ends up being. It's a day when young girls are chosen to attend or not attend the magical school of Modelland. It's like Hogwarts or whatever. It's a magical private school on the top of a magical mountain where you are a supermodel, but you also have superpowers.
And one of the supermodels each year is granted all of the superpowers. and she's like the 777.
Right. She's the Avatar or an Origin and Lightlark. She has all of the powers. We'll get into those in due time. Don't you worry.
Yes. Yes.
This isn't fair or accurate, but I imagined Modelland Mountain as Barad-dûr in Lord of the Rings, like the tower with the creepy eye on top, because there's one scene where an eye appears and like stares down at the like little denizens. So just as a reminder, it is either this or work at a factory for the rest of your life if you're a girl. So everyone at least tries to get selected in TDOD.
Everyone in the world, by the way, not just this one city.
Oh, yeah, I should have specified. Yes, this is the entire world. There are other countries. We'll get to them in due time. But Tookie lives in Metopia, which is part of Ladorno, I think. I don't know. The countries don't really matter, except for when they do, and they're very upsetting.
Yeah, like it's just worth mentioning. I think that like she lives in close physical proximity to the mountain where Modelland is located.
Yeah, it's like the fashion capital of the world or whatever because it's so close. The school barely matters. It's really not worth going into a lot of it, but there's a couple of things that you should know about just to get them out of the way. There is Theophilus Lovelaces, who is a nice, popular boy who is like running for re-election as the class president. It's all very cartoony and stupid. He notices Tookie at one point, and now Tookie has this big crush on him. There's this montage where he's like giving out buttons for his re-election campaign that say like, take a chance on love, or I don't know what it says, but it has a bunch of letters in it anyways, and you know, it gets dropped and then someone kicks it and then someone picks it up and puts it on a tray, and then the tray gets kicked and it ends up by a comedy of errors in a trash can, and then all the letters that remain spell out Took-e, which is almost Tookie's name. This led me to believe that there was more magic in the world, or at least an unseen force directing the events, but we don't get any of that, so don't worry about it. Just know that Tookie is hung up on this guy Theophilus from high school.
It's funny that you had that read because it led me to believe that Tookie was like delusional and maybe an unreliable narrator. And now I think maybe I've just been reading too much The King in Yellow and I just assume that everybody is insane.
Well, I mean, that's definitely a possibility as well. There's Zarpessa, I don't know her last name, Theophilus' girlfriend who pretends to be rich and catty and will later learn that she's actually poor and catty. And then there is Lizzie, buried lead for book 2. Tookie's best friend who lives in a trash fort in a tree, who is periodically institutionalized for paranoid delusions. She's actually introduced as missing and then just shows up a chapter or two in. It's kind of weird to me, but the hospital that she's escaped from is known for being especially cruel, even for this crazy, stupid world. And Lizzie's described as having all of these scars and burns. There are also gestures to her causing harm to herself. I really, really do not like her. This is a great example of something I was just talking about as being uncomfortable and hard to justify being there in the first place. Quite frankly, I just don't know if Tyra Banks knows who Lizzie is or what to do with her. It reminds me, if you remember one of our episodes on Onision, I think it was Reaper's Creek, where the narrator's little friend clearly was autistic coded, but like, I think Tyra knew someone who was struggling with some really bad mental health issues and just depicted it here with no commentary or thought put into it.
I think she maybe didn't know how to render it on the page, especially in combination with the tone of this book, which is really whimsical and saccharine, intentionally so.
Yes.
And so whenever Lizzie pops up, and sometimes she even like does self-harm on page and it's like brutal to the point of being like psychological or body horror. It's like somebody's sitting in church blowing on like a wooden train whistle. It's like wretchedly timed and just so inappropriate and bizarre that it I don't know, it left me just like totally unsure how to feel. Like, what is she trying to do with this? She being Tyra Banks, if anything.
Right, if anything is the operative point there. I'm not saying that the book like demonizes her or anything. Tookie is her best friend and she knows that Lizzie is sick and that's never called into question, but I really don't know why she's here. And you'll see that she really doesn't serve many purposes, especially outside of Act 1. Right now, all we get is that they hang out in the trash treehouse and they talk about their plans to escape and start a factory of their own. And then there's one scene where Lizzie takes Tookie to go watch Zarpessa go dumpster diving, which is where we learn that she is actually poor. So there is a reason she's there, but I just don't. It's so hard to read. TDOD is fast approaching, but as much as Tookie thinks that it would be cool to go and be an Intoxibella, she knows it's not for her. And besides, she has this sister named Miracle who fits the bill much better. That's Miracle with 2 R's and a Y. I love Miracle. I love her so much. She's delightful. She's so ditzy and weird, and she dances and sings everywhere. She has all of these funny little Carmine Lupertazzi malapropisms. She and Tookie don't exactly see eye to eye, but there's definitely a sense that there's a sisterhood between them. There's not a lot of real animosity. There's definitely just a sense of like, you know, you annoy me because you're my more popular and pretty sister, but it doesn't go super deep and get very unpleasant. The real animosity comes from their mother, Creme de la Creme, which is even what her daughters call her. Like everyone calls her Creamy no matter what, which just, I just don't know about that one.
That they do so.
Right. With threats of violence. They live in this massive stucco palazzo that's cracked at the foundation and falling apart to the point where you may just get crushed by a piece of falling roof as you're walking up to the front door. It's a bit much, but so is the rest of this book, so
It's really giving like 2008 housing crisis anxiety McMansion, like... Yeah.
You're on it with the metaphors. This is so evocative. You're exactly right. So Creamy is like an evil Disney stepmother if she were actually the real mother of our protagonist. She spends all of her time carrying around a baby doll that she calls Bellissima, that she loves more than her own children, and she throws away produce for the slightest infractions. Like, she's terrible.
Yeah, when bananas start to get even like a single brown spot, she throws them away because they don't contribute to the put together version of her life that she's trying to curate. Like she tries to cover up every flaw that the house has without actually fixing it. Like if the tile is cracked, you know, behind the sink or whatever, she puts up, you know, plastic tiles covering it in the place of the crack instead of actually solving any of the underlying problems.
No, because we're not going to do any of that here. This is Act 1, and we only present the problems.
That's right.
Their father, Chris Creme Crobat, is, like his name implies, a former acrobat who ended his career after this comedy of errors where, see if you follow me on this one. So he's doing a performance on a trapeze, and then Creamy is like doing her makeup and brings out her little makeup mirror or whatever you call it, and it refracts light into his eyes, blinding him and forcing him to fall. But then he doesn't like actually have anything bad happen from the fall. He's such a good acrobat that he recovered from it, and everyone's like so excited about it that he takes a bow and accidentally pokes his eye out on a prop sword that was set up.
Yes,
just we get all of this in a lot more detail than I'm giving you, so like it's just like, what the hell is going on here?
No, you really semantically whittled that down to the bare nub of its meaning. I was having so much trouble following that scene. It was like it was giving the chaos magic from Handbook for Mortals, where it was just like indescribable nonsense. But yeah, I think you nailed it.
Lately, Creamy's been focused on finding a smize for Miracle. Smizes, which are capitalized, but for the life of me, I don't know and or remember what they stand for, are these MacGuffins that I thought would be so much more important than they ended up being. They're these little eye things. They attach to your eye, and it looks like makeup or eyeshadow or whatever, and they make the odds of you being chosen at TDOD 91%, no matter any other factors. For some unexplained reason, they're distributed through the water system, which just results in everyone running all their taps just constantly, including the De La Cremes. Which that made me so mad. That was like the throwing away the bananas and then the constantly running your water. I was like, come on.
It is weird. I forgot that they were associated specifically with water because they do just like fade out of the narrative after this.
Yeah.
But I don't think that matters at all, does it?
No, it does not. Because wouldn't you know it, Creamy's like, Tookie, as you know, I hate you, and I've put all of my hope in Miracle, so make me tea. And Tookie does. She runs the water, and wouldn't you know it, a Smize pops out. It projects this holographic message that implies that it or Modelland can see what is going on around it. And of course, Creamy doesn't even acknowledge that Tookie is the one who found it. She's just like, oh, this will be perfect for my little girl Miracle. So they go TDOD shopping for Miracle at the Sapphire Esplanade, a comically large and opulent shopping mall. They pass by this known character named Wingtip, who is a slightly creepy eccentric who Tookie feels a strange camaraderie with, you could say. But that's all they tell you right now, so I will leave it at that for the sake of making this mirror the story.
Okay.
Creamy's just like, oh, don't look at that filthy slummer, Tookie. He's got rabies, or something stupid like that, and then they just walk away.
He had rabies just like Tyra Banks did that one time.
Right? There's a lot of rabies in this book.
Maybe that's why the water in the Smizes, it's like a hydrophobia thing.
Hydrophobia! All the while, Mount Modelland door looms ominously in the distance. There are 3 relatively new obelisks at the foot of the mountain. They're called the Obscure Obelisks. By relative, I mean within the past year or so. They've been imbued with this religious significance lately, but that doesn't matter, and no one really knows what they are, and don't worry about it. It's just, I just need you to know that there are obelisks there.
That's right.
Suddenly, the fog and the clouds in the mountain clear, and a disembodied voice announces that it's time for some stupid fucking exposition. And it doesn't matter. This is the Belladonna. She's the ringleader, or whoever it was in the Cyborg Tinkerer. I've already forgotten the name of that bad guy. Whoever it was, like
the mistress, I think.
The mistress. Yeah, this is the mistress. She's the head honcho, the suzerain of Modelland.
She's also like the headmistress of the school.
Right. So she's a lot of things, and she chooses who gets into Modelland, who graduates, all that stuff.
So it's sort of like the opposite of Ariadne in Crown of Starlight, because instead of going to dictator school, she is the school dictator.
Yes, in many ways, this is the opposite of Crown of Starlight. This announcement is to introduce the new round of Intoxibellas, which are basically, like I said, superpowered supermodels. There's only 7 of them from every year, but there are, countless or indeterminate numbers of them. I wasn't clear on this at first, but yes, there are more than 7 at any one given time. They're like the Toa from Bionicle. They do what supermodels do in our real world. They're tastemakers. They pose for pictures. They do advertisements for whatever. But they also, again, have superpowers. None of these powers actually matter. I cannot think of a single time where any of these powers are used, because many times there are MacGuffins that do the equivalent of these powers but are not associated with these powers. But I will tell you them anyways, because I think they're funny.
I was just about to ask if you were still going to take us through every single model from the graduating class being introduced, because the novel does just sit us down and take us through a litany of every single one of these girls. They each get like a little splash screen and a little quip and a little demonstration of their power. It's like a Smash Brothers intro trailer for like a DLC character. And after the third one, I was like, surely at some point we're going to switch from being in scene to being in narration. But no, nope. Tyra Banks has afforded us no such mercies. She has painstakingly world built all of these characters and their powers, and so we will know them. we will know their names.
You saw 500 pages of this shit, and you thought that we would ever switch out of the scene and into narration? Like, that's on you. That's on you at that point.
No, I don't know if she even knows what that is.
So I don't remember, and I didn't write down the names because they didn't matter, but the names of the Intoxibellas. But the powers are as follows. There is Chameleone, which is shape-shifting. There's Multiplicity, which is cloners from Powerless. 30 Never, which is literally the most disgusting power ever. Your lifespan is the same, but you age physically to age 29, at which point you loop back to physically being age 17. Very, very interesting number there. There's Excite to Buy, which is mind control. It's just mind control. They make you want to buy things.
Mind control for capitalism specifically.
Right. Seduction, which is seduction, and also literally just mind control.
There's like some people that are around Tookie when this announcement happens, because like, remember, this is just being broadcasted from the mountain, and so like everybody in the world, presumably, at least in this country, can see it. And there's like some dudes that are around her, and when the seduction model is introduced, one of the guys is like, I would cheat on my wife for her right now. And it's like, what? It's like supposed to be funny, but also it's disturbing in a Zenith way.
Right. With everything I announce, just imagine that there's some little Genkai arc anime side character being like, oh, wow, she's so hot. Oh, wow, I sure want to buy that product. And you'll basically recreate Modelland in your head. There is Six Sensa, which is a prescience for fashion trends specifically and nothing else. Teleportaling, which is a word so stupid I've only ever heard it in Half-Life Full Life Consequences, which is teleporting. And again, like Jay mentioned, you can also be a 777, which despite its name means that you have all 7 powers and you're like the Avatar. I don't know why they call it 777.
I was reading it as like you won the lottery because, you know, like on a slot machine.
Oh. In between this exposition and all this other bullshit, there's these people that are selling merchandise and holding signs demanding to know the location of CL, that is CI tilde L, who is a famous 777 and has recently gone missing. Lizzie shows up, says something sinister and weird, and then goes away. That is all that happens. Later, while brushing her teeth, Tookie overhears a heated argument between Mr. and Mrs. de la Creme. Chris Creme-Crobat has all of a sudden come to the conclusion that Tookie is not his actual daughter, and even having read the book, I struggle to understand exactly why this happens here and now. Yep. Okay, so it sounds like you had the same problem.
Yeah,
maybe
exactly
we missed something. Okay.
It's fully to do with the timing of it. Like, it's like, why now?
Right. Why now is the big thing. Well, why now is because of narrative structure. But anyways,
okay,
I did feel bad for Tookie here. I had at least thought that her dad was normal. There were some warm scenes that I didn't touch on between them hitherto. But now he's talking about selling Tookie to go work in a factory for the rest of her life. And Creme is more offended about the accusation of cheating than she's against selling Tookie. So she's totally on board for that. So it just feels so bad for her.
Yeah, they're so bizarrely evil that, like, even in a book with this tone, I felt like it was stretching my suspension of disbelief just a little bit. I still wanted them to be like human people to an extent.
It'll be too annoying for me to summarize every time this happens, but just know that from now on, Tookie is going to think about like the weird thing with her dad every time she brushes her teeth, which I actually kind of like. There's a little tactile association there that makes it feel real to me. Tookie resolves to escape and enact her plan to join Lizzie and work in a factory, but a factory that they own, so it's slightly less shitty. She signals Lizzie by painting X-O-2 or Exodose on their front door. Her parents never noticed this, and this also implies that Lizzie is watching her house constantly.
I know.
so it's just a little bit weird.
Yeah, it's so sinister. It's they agreed previously that they would do this when it was time to make their escape, but then she actually does it, And it's like, wait a second, has she been watching her house every night for this whole time?
Right. But anyways, just before Tookie can make her escape the next morning, Creme finds her with her bags outside and is like, oh, wow, Tookie, you're such a great sister. You're already getting a bag to help out Miracle for her big day, and forces her into the car and drives away. Lizzie looks on in horror and betrayal, and Tookie is all sad about it. But anyways, now it's finally time for TDOD. The Greek chorus italics lady says that there's always pandemonium afterwards for the people who don't get chosen, and some of them are even so crazed that they contract what's called the Pilgrim's Plague and embark upon a quest up the mountain through the Diabolical Divide, which is a cartoonishly deadly place full of monsters and weird shit that we will learn a lot about soon. So TDOD is just... everyone goes to Main Street or the town square or whatever and just walks. Yep. Like, walks down the street. There are no rules. Nope. You just walk.
It's interesting because, and I'm sure you'll get to this in a second, but like we see some other civilizations version of TDOD, and like they do express a little bit differently, but at least in Mytopia, everybody literally just goes to like one street and they all fashion walk, which of course leads to complete pandemonium.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there are uncanny differences, but as far as I know, everyone is just doing some permutation of walking.
Pretty much.
So, but to be fair, this is supposed to be as ridiculous and arbitrary as it sounds. To give Tyra and her ghostwriter credit, like I think this is intentional because of things that we'll learn very soon.
They definitely want this to feel frenzied, and it's scary, I think, to a degree. Scary both in the sense that you fear for the physical well-being of the characters, and also scary in the sense that like you wonder why everybody is doing this, like why they're all, or how they could all come to be so desperate to be let into Modelland. So it is lampshaded pretty well, I think.
Miracle puts on her smize and starts walking with the other girls. People already start fighting and falling into manholes and doing weird shit. It's so weird. And steadily, scouts begin appearing. So scouts are these ethereal, beautiful people that mesh out of inanimate objects. Like one emerges from a street light, like melts out from it, and another one descends from the sky like a meteor. They feel very inhuman, like angels or something, and it's very visually interesting. I was kind of into like all the weird different ways that they can appear, even though it doesn't matter.
There's something very creepy about them. Like they appear and then they take the girls that they think are likely to be successful models, and their parents are happy to see them be raptured, essentially.
Right.
And I think there's like a moment of also intentional horror when we see the first girls being taken, and we wonder for like just a second, like, what if Modelland isn't such a good place after all, and these girls are just being abducted?
Right, and what if it is? Ooh! So Zarpessa gets chosen, then a scout appears in front of the De La Creme family to choose Tookie. Oh my god, she's the most special girl ever! Who could have seen this coming? Even though Miracle had a 91% chance of getting chosen, she didn't get chosen. It was Tookie instead. Tookie Scout takes her in a pouch like Krampus and flies away. They teleportal, or I guess just normal teleport, to a massive mall or convenience store or something where we meet Dylan, who is a bigger girl with blonde hair and pigtails and speaks like how a Californian elite thinks that Southerners speak, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
like it doesn't feel very accurate at all, but
no.
I think that's what they're going for.
I think so.
She's very spunky and confident and says something like, a lot of big boutique booty is exactly what Modelland needs, or something, before getting in the Krampus pouch.
Right.
Then they go to Can del Abra, which is an etymologically toxic amalgamation of what I think is Saudi Arabia and like Morocco or other Arabic speaking places that have been colonized by Romance language speaking protectorates. Anyways,
it's like Tunisia or something.
Yeah, like Tunisia. They meet Cherise, who is very short and speaks like how a Californian elite thinks that ESL Arabic speakers speak. I don't like it very much.
No.
We will get more into it later, but
yeah,
I don't find this very nice.
So if the joke is that Dylan is sassy, then the joke is that Shiraz is that English is not her first language, and so she also has malapropisms like Miracle,
right?
But also filtered through an offensively like inflected accent that's inflected like in the text.
Yeah, it's just it does not feel realistic, but she's also very spunky and confident for what it's worth. There's a very brief moment of tension between these girls as they realize that none of them are conventionally attractive. More on that later. The final nail on the coffin is Piper, who they pick up from the country Sans Color, another etymologically toxic place, which is the most fanciful country to my recollection. It's this mathematically perfect Excel spreadsheet city under a glass dome in which lives a society of people with albinism.
It's like the society in oh man, what is that anime called? It's like Sector 6 or Division 6 or something, but they all live in glass domes and they're all prodigies, but they're all miserable. Whatever that show's called. It's like got the bee imagery. But yeah,
it's just like anime.
It's just like anime. I'm always saying this and no one's ever listening to me, but you have to understand it's just like an anime, you guys.
They are surrounded by, and I am quoting here, a horde of demonic, yellow-eyed reptilian jungle inhabitants who want to eat them and, like, harvest their, I think, pancreases or some, like, obscure part of the body.
Some funny-sounding organ.
Right. These are the Legizards. The A here has some, not a grave, but the opposite of a grave. So a little uppercase lambda. I don't know what kind of diacritic that is, but Piper speaks like a Californian elite thinks that a nerd speaks. She's also the daughter of the prime minister, which feels like it would matter, but doesn't. So now they have their full group, and it becomes obvious again that none of them are the stereotypical Modelland novitiates. This calls to mind rumors that Dylan has heard about human experimentation and sacrifices on plain-looking girls that are performed in Modelland. For much of the action, Tookie will always have it in the back of her mind that she's only there to be harvested, which I think does add a really good sinister edge to the entire proceedings of what otherwise would be incredibly boring scenes.
Completely agree. The ambiguity is very nice. It even makes sense in world, especially because the girls explicitly think that if Modelland is doing this, it's something they do in secret for reasons that are unclear. So there's like a good in-world reason for them not to know, but also not to be able to like ask directly about it or even investigate it very easily. So it just kind of hangs over them for a long time.
They finally scale the Modelland mountain and they see debris in the diabolical divide, just implying that a bunch of pilgrims have freaking died. There's like bloodstained jackets or whatever. It's very harrowing. Finally, in Modelland, they are deposited at the gates where they're greeted by a guy who has a giant head for a hand. I don't know what kind of species he is. He's not given a name like Legizard. He's just a guy with a head for a hand.
I have thoughts about him and similar characters, but we'll get to that later.
His name is Guru Aplose, and he speaks Je nique ta mère. I mean, très joli, which means just French. He just speaks French, and it's not very accurate French, but it is French. The only point to this is he just comically refuses to believe that they're prospective Bellas, and he takes them for seamstresses, and he's never disabused of this notion, and that's like a comedic little thing that he does. Anyways, they get a good look at the scout for once, and she is an Intoxibella, and she has a magic golden sash called a Centura that's supposed to be like the way magical powers are channeled their wands, essentially.
It's a wand, yeah. It is a conduit
it's a wand.
between one's will and one's body.
She isn't any Intoxabella, in fact. She is CL, the long missing Intoxabella, the 777. I think she's the last living 777, but I could be wrong about that.
I think that's right.
And in a very J-pilled fashion, she is a renowned slam poet.
Yes. And in particular, a poet who has quite the thematic and semantic range. It sounds like she is capable of both moving people and being politically incisive / pause.
/pause, which is hard for a poet to be. She is very cold and distant with the girls despite having chosen them, but then she like defends their position as prospective bellas to applaudisse. So already we get this weird back and forth where sometimes she's completely hostile and other times she's like willing to kill for these people, basically. It's very clear that she's a conflicted character from the get-go. We will meet a lot of characters as we go through the gates. It's not necessary for us to go into them, but all of their countries of origin are similarly cartoonish and silly. There's VK, for example, of Nordensui, which is a portmanteau of several Scandinavian countries. There's Franca of Cappuccina, which I think is supposed to be Italy. And then there's Kamalini of Chakra, who is supposed to be from India. So stuff like that. It's all like obvious what is being drawn from, but they're not the countries actually being used in name there.
And they're all various levels of distasteful.
Yes. Distasteful is a very good way to sum them up. The gate has this automated robotic mosaic face that says a silly word or neologism every time that a student is accepted in. Corroborated, confirmated, authenticated, whatever. Tookie is allowed in, but the face seems to hesitate when he accepts her. And then before Piper, Dylan, and Shiraz enter, CL walks up to it and hacks the face somehow, whispers in its ear, and it glitches out. And suddenly it's too enthusiastic about letting them in. They let them in a little bit too quickly. So there are 100 girls exactly, I think. Only 7 of them are going to graduate, which gears us up for some dumb magic death school classroom montages or whatever. It's
deadly
terrible.
Game.
Literally. It's Divergent, it's Hunger Games, it's whatever, it's Fourth Wing. Modelland is a phantasmagorical architectural nightmare with a bunch of weird non-Euclidean buildings and pathways with people transformed into cats and funhouse mirror towers. I don't know. Time is measured in color. It's another intentionally nonsensical thing, but no one ever gets used to it, so it's very intentional there. Lunch is at Goldenrod, their first class is at Midnight Blue, stuff like that. Everything smells like blood oranges there, which is yet another thing that I thought would matter, but did not ultimately.
That must be set up for something in book 2, because it always stops the narrative when it happens. Tookie smells the blood oranges and she looks up into the sky as though there's someone there or something like that. I don't think it did ever come to anything.
They are shown around by this upper-class Bella named Jinjin, who is a good-natured girl who has chameleon powers and is a big fan of CL. And we learned that CL went rogue at one point and was forced into these scout duties as a sort of punishment.
Yeah, she's on some kind of probation at the moment, and it's implied that any time that she's out checking in on the protagonist, she maybe shouldn't be there or could be in trouble if she was caught with them. But we'll find out more about that later.
Jinjin just exists as an exposition factory and to call out that Tookie is on the list, but the other 3 aren't, which sure is suspicious. I'm sure this is going to pay off. We see the M, which is the administrative building where the Belladonna lives, the head honcho, the headmistress, whatever. There's the Beautification Boulevard where all the classes happen. There's a brother male modeling academy called Bestosterone. Which I just love. And then they're building, the Bestostero boys are, a arena where they are going to ultimately face off against each other. Also, there are fireballs that descend from the diabolical divide to Modelland somehow for literally no reason and has killed multiple people before, but that doesn't matter either. So that's just another fun, quirky thing about this magic world.
Yep, sometimes you'll just die. It's definitely going for like a Harry Potter adjacent feel where like the magic school is a place where if you're not careful, you can just be offed.
You just die.
But it's also like trying to be low stakes about it, so it always plays that for humor.
But it really just doesn't feel funny when people die by being crushed by fireballs like it's the end of Rin-Tung Dorner.
Maybe they'll enter their cocoons of like cinder or whatever it was and then be reborn as stars in literal actual heaven.
Yeah,
Who can say?
Something very SBU pilled, but alas. Their teachers are called gurus, and the highest of gurus comprise the board, which is intentionally misspelled as the BORED, because apparently they're just so high and mighty that they don't care about anything. I guess that's the commentary there. They're all very sinister. One of them has lizard skin, but he's not a Legazard, as I know. The other one has moving tattoos like Soyina Rumbard and Zenith. One of them is an androgynous man whose description is very, very upsetting to me.
Yes. He is a homophobic and maybe even transphobic stereotype. The jury's still out on exactly what kind of bigotry is on display there, but I know I'm being targeted and I don't like it.
No. Thankfully, all of them rarely feature in this book, though, save for the very, very end. We also see the Manacants, who are the soulless servants of Modelland that were once Perspective and Toxabellas, who didn't make the cut but opted to just have a life of service because it's better than going back and working in a factory or whatever. And then there's all of these statues of the Belladonna here and there who seem to be watching Tookie everywhere she goes. One of these statues sings a dumb song welcoming them to Modelland, and part of the song involves CL wearing a straitjacket in a birdcage made of razors and is just used as an image to warn the Perspective and Toxabellas not to fall out of line. It's so weird. Zarpessa, who has made it into Modelland, features here and there in this opening sequence, and Tookie makes a big point of never telling anyone what she knows about the fact that she's actually poor and dumpster dives for food, despite Zarpessa always being really mean to her. CL says something like, never stoop to their level, never give them the ammunition that they need, you're better than them, whatever. It's all very hero's journey kind of stuff. Their first class is THBC, Thigh High Boot Camp, which more or less sums up what they're in for. It's led by Guru Ganero Nars, one of the members of the board. Manacants just appear and dryly critique everyone's body. They get made up with a bunch of makeup. You get the vibe that this is supposed to be the opening to some really weird reality TV show or something. It's not very high stakes. But then, oh no, it's making them all ugly. A bunch of girls just run out in shock and terror and quit Modelland, but Tookie remains calm and realizes that it's all just an illusion. This is lesson 1. Don't share makeup. Then they get a bunch of accessories, which then attack them or strangle them or get really heavy or whatever. Once again, a bunch of the girls run out of the room and Tookie remains calm. Lesson 2 is don't wear knockoff brands. Always pay proper fealty to the other people who exploit cheap labor, not the ones who make knockoff brands. Then they get a needle stuck in their foreheads. They get transported via these needles to this pocket dimension where they float in a bubble, and they're supposed to have a magic show, but Tookie's bubble takes her to a door labeled home. And that's the end of the scene. Tookie wakes up outside of the Beautification Boulevard unharmed. The girls have no idea that Tookie was not involved in the fashion show pocket dimension thing. And then they go to the D, which is the dorms. And yes, it does feel like this book knows the implication of what the D implies, because there's all of these little jokes about like Jin saying, oh, Tookie, are you admiring the D? Which is really creepy, but it's supposed to be funny. So they finally get their Centuras in the dorm, which are like, again, magic wands. They channel powers. Kind of like the Smizes, they seem to possess this rudimentary intelligence In 12 Elemental Master style, they also have these beds with bed sheets that get decorated into a tasteful depiction of whoever's occupying the bed. It's just... I just don't know. The only minor character of any note here is the Chakran girl, Kalamani, who is addicted to music. So she always has these headphones on, and her quirk is just she'll be in the background of this dramatic scene, completely obliviously listening to music, which is one of those Save the Cats or writing the breakout novel things about having the Pope swim in the background of a scene. I really don't know what the point is of that. It's just upsetting, like equating it with like a chemical addiction, but I just don't know.
Not only is it like a weird, inappropriate metaphor for like substance dependency, it also like serves to set up, like it gets explained by trauma later. Like she has this weird little pocket story arc that doesn't affect really any of the others.
No.
But she explains that like she has trauma from some family stuff that happened that involved like her being too generous with her rich family's money or something like that. And so now she listens to music all the time to like block out reality. It really feels like the kind of problem that somebody who is, say, a California elite would imagine is the worst thing that could possibly happen to somebody. Yep. It doesn't really bear going into any more detail than that, but
just know that
it's there, I guess.
Yeah. So Tookie sleepwalks for the sole purpose of getting her into scenes that she otherwise wouldn't be in. It happens like twice. And this time she sleepwalks into a strange dungeon where CL is self-flagellating with a 2x4, but then she just wakes back up in the D. It turns out that every single person in Modelland, or all the new prospective Bellas anyways, have gotten their periods at the exact same time. So from now on, this is their last period that they're ever going to have. There's some kind of reproduction suppression field that prevents them from menstruating in order to prevent them from having any sort of excuse to not show up and be a model, which is, again, kind of just abstractly upsetting. But they can still get pregnant if they want to. They're sure to specify. I really just don't want to get into the biology of this or the implications of this. I didn't mention it because it wasn't worth talking about in the moment, but Tookie hasn't gotten her period yet, and she's very sad that this is her first and last one. So it's just another example of the gross, weird things that Modelland does to your body, and I think is some sort of intentional commentary that feels vestigial. She will later on meet the Bestostero Bravo, who is this attractive nice guy who's uncharacteristically interested in Tookie and notices her and ignores the fellow Bestosteros that just mock her for being plain looking, but more on him later. They go to Kara class. It's in this abandoned ship in a pond whose interior is like the skin of a shark. I just don't even know what the implication or the purpose of this is.
No.
It's taught by Guru Pacifico Cruz from the land of Texacoco. And the class is about how to maneuver your face. So he just shows them a slideshow of different images and demands that you make the opposite face of what you're seeing. So like, you see a picture of a puppy get kicked and you're supposed to laugh and smile, or you see a happy family and you're supposed to frown. Tookie notably does particularly poorly at this, but there's not really any consequences that happen to the scene. Later, at the Runaway Intensive, Gunero Nars from the Thigh High Boot Camp co-teaches with CL. She begins the class by reciting a poem that seems to be about Piper, Cherise, and Dylan, but implies that they're all dead and being eaten by insects in their graves or something. It's like, the implication is like she just wants to murder them or something, but we'll learn more about what she means by that later on. This makes a Belladonna statue in the classroom react angrily and causes flowers to burst from CL's lips. The class is ostensibly about how to use one's Centuras, but they just, again, walk to music, kind of like TDOD. There's some conflict with Zarpessa, who seems to be sabotaging Tookie's walk somehow by, like, I think stealing her Centura and switching it with something that she, like, made out of spare fabric that she took from back home or something. I don't know.
Yeah, because you get to bring one thing with you to Modelland, and she had brought something that was made out of yellow fabric and then swapped Tookie's Centura with it.
Right.
So she isn't able to, like, do the walk right or something.
So dumb. Then they go to mastication class, where the teacher
Oh boy.
grabs their tongues and tells them what their favorite food is. There's some touching on complications that people in the modeling industry might feel about eating, and then they just eat a lot. They eat a lot of their favorite foods. So for Tookie, it's whipped cream. For Zarpessa, it's food from a dumpster. For Dylan, it's Walmart brand pizza, and it's very similar with the beats of Zarpessa being kind of mean to Tookie and Tookie being stoic and nice, but this is definitely something that kind of draws very specifically from the implications of modeling and the relationship that people might have around food, and it's a lot more than the stupid scene implies that it is.
Yeah, this one is like definitely the worst because there's a confluence of like the talking about disordered eating without actually talking about disordered eating, and then the teacher doing like, I'm gonna call it gastromancy because that sounds cool.
Yeah.
But really what the teacher is doing is, like you said, pulling out their tongues and then like telling them facts about themselves, like palm reading, but with a tongue. But everything that she says is just completely unimpressive, and so it like ticks me off in the same way that the Lightlark prophecy ticks me off, where like the Lightlark prophecy only makes sense in the after effect because it was so vague to begin with. This is that same kind of like Barnum effect language where
Right.
like what she's telling them, aside from I guess guessing their favorite food precisely, which is kind of cool, she just tells them these like vagaries
Right.
that are like who cares, like what how does this help me? Like if you are psychic and you have the ability to tell me knowledge about myself, why are you just spending the energy telling me things I already know? Clearly the goal of that is to make you look impressive. Like, does this have any actual utility or no? And it seems like no.
No, absolutely not. Later on, they go to the OOOOH, which is a spa with character-defining flashbacks manned by a mannequin named Persimmon. Most of the people get pretty bad flashbacks. None of it's worth getting into. And Tookie specifically asks for a good one. And she sees her parents doting upon her lovingly as a baby, which points to some terrible thing that changed the nature of their relationship that we really don't get much insight into other than this one flashback. So buried lead for book 2 again.
The scout's body tensed, and in the blink of an eye, Miss de la Creme changed her tune. Well, I mean, lovely bejeweled goddess, you do indeed know best. You can whack, slap, smack, clobber, knock out, and even give my Miracle a black eye. Do as you wish. Just choose her. Miracle pointed accusingly at Tookie. She's the one you should be smacking. She doesn't even care about Modelland. Yes, I do. Not that any of you ever asked.
After this prolonged montage where I hope you feel the bloat and redundancy of all of these scenes, we get a rug pull of POV into Creme. So Creme, still holding her doll, Miracle, and some unnamed mooks, including this girl from B3 who is named Abigail Good, and her mother. They champion this sort of social movement around body hair acceptance. And there's some other people there, but they don't matter. They're at the foot of Mount Modelland, and all of the girls are convinced that they should be chosen. These are the people with Pilgrim's Plague that were alluded to. They're going to scale the mountain with the help of this Legizard and this random woman who sort of acts as a Sherpa for them. There's just this ill-fated pilgrimage up this mountain that we're going to get to periodically, like Grim Before chapters.
Yes, like Grim Before chapters. Or like filler episodes.
Or filler episodes, because God, does none of it matter. We then skip 3 months. Still unsure of herself and haunted by her past, Tookie runs into Bravo again, that boy from Bestostero, leading to this bizarre scene where Bravo's doing construction work and a splinter gets lodged into Tookie's bottom lip, and he picks it out seductively.
I can't stand the finger sucking in this book. It's so weird.
Yeah,
It happens so many times.
He's putting his thumb on her mouth, and Tookie yields to lapel de vide and just sucks it. It's revolting, yes, but I don't know. Like, you do revolting things when you're a teenager with a crush on somebody, but I think the revulsion, to me at least as a reader, is how predatory everything in Modelland feels. And this weird gesture, maybe unfairly, feels a lot creepier than it is perhaps intended to have been.
I think that's a great read on it. There's something about the threat about everything else in Modelland that, like, by proximity to this also makes this feel threatening than maybe it actually is.
Right.
Which is not helped by the fact that Bravo is like the hottest guy from Bestosterone, and all of the other girls would like to be with him,
right?
Which kind of creates like a weird power dynamic between him and Tookie, right? Because she's plain and overlooked, and he's like the most popular guy, and he's also a little older, and he's been there longer, and it's just like there's a lot of questions. I think it's fair to say.
I like just leaving it at there's a lot of questions. The next class that we see is WOW, or War of the Words, which is just debate class, but it's debate about fashion senses and beauty standards. It's taught by this markedly ugly man named Guru Matt Joe. That's one word. And CL is brought in as a student to the class in sort of a humiliation ritual for her. She's wearing a jumpsuit labeled the Ugly Room, which I think is funny. The debate, foreshadowingly, is about the relationship between unusual physicality and conventional beauty. That's literally what they say. It's disproportionately philosophical and stating the theme in a way that nothing else even comes close to in this entire book.
And I think something that's noteworthy about the debate, and there's a few of these that happen throughout the book, is that the way that you win is by being as bad faith as possible. Like ad hominems, total pivots, misdirections, outright hostility, sometimes even bordering on or maybe even including physical violence are all on the table. You win by any means necessary. Like, it's called a debate class, but there's very little good faith exchange of ideas.
Oh boy, is there not.
No, it's like so little to do with like ethically good rhetoric and everything to do with what rhetoric is the most effective at making your opponent look stupid.
Right, like any good debate streamer. Finally, something new happens in one of these class scenes, and CL just has a breakdown and screams about Modelland brainwashing its students and only valuing certain kinds of beauty. Everyone runs off for some reason, and Tookie tries to chase down her friends and ends up in Catwalk Corridor, which is just full of mean talking cats who are intoxibellas who are temporarily transformed as a form of punishment. This probably means something. I wonder about what the classical associations of cats are, or what could be the inspiration point here, but they're just mean cats, and some of them scratch
They're catty.
Tookie. They're catty. Oh, yeah, I mean, they're catty, but fuck you. There's got to be something else to it.
I don't know. I was too distracted by the fact that most of them are in there because they used substances that the belladonna has decided are like off limits. Like, I don't remember exactly what phrase the book uses, but it's something like, "Ooh, they experimented with narcotics."
Right. It's weird shit like that. But it doesn't matter other than that Tookie gets some cat scratches. So our four heroes are feeling a bit insecure, and they trade backstories about what they don't like about themselves and what they wished they look like. Bound by their unconventional appearance, they name their little group the Unikas, because they're unique. I don't know if you guys got that, but
that just clicked for me. I like that.
Very important that you understand the etymology there. Tookie has to go to the Fed, or the Fashion Emergency Department store, which is just the nurse's office. I don't know why they call it that. Excuse me, the purse's office, because purses are fashion accessories.
Right. And it rhymes with nurse.
Right.
And they have no associative connection whatsoever, but we've run out of ideas at this point, so we're just truly free associating based on sound, like a toddler.
Like a toddler. Like Victorian rhyming slang. Apparently, the cats in the catwalk corridor have tetanus on their claws. You'll get tetanus if they scratch you. So this entire time, Tookie's been seconds away from lockjaw. That's fun, I guess. She encounters this character named Desperada, who we met before, but doesn't matter. She's suffering from BW, boy withdrawal, as well as Zarpessa, who is there for something about her hands, and then Bravo, who has some gnarly cut from one of his construction accidents. I don't even remember.
He's got a boy disease from being a boy.
Yeah, boy disease. Yeah, he's got too much testosterone. The doctors roller skate everywhere. They're a species of people with roller skate feet. It's not like they have roller skate on their normal human feet. They are a different group of people. They prioritize face injuries because this is Modelland. And that means that Tookie jumps the line and angers Zarpessa. Something weird happens where Tookie's treatment or anesthesia or whatever makes her tum numb, which makes it just so annoying to read as Tookie and Bravo flirt, and Zarpessa gets epically owned in the marketplace of ideas, and Bravo then triumphantly sprays whipped cream in Tookie's mouth. Good lord, I don't like this, but it's supposed to be very cute, I think. So Tookie sleepwalks again for the second and final time, and this time she ends up in the M, which is the big scary glass tower where the administrative building is and the Belladonna lives.
And they've been told explicitly not to go.
Right. They're not supposed to go in there. And if you're wondering how she got into this place with a lot of security and it's off limits to students, me too, buddy.
Yeah. You can keep wondering.
Yeah, keep wondering that for the rest of your life. It's like a stealth segment in a video game. All of the interior walls are themselves glass and just periodically shift from opaque to transparent. So she has to carefully maneuver like tile by tile through these corridors. Once again, the point of this scene is to see CL being tortured, and this time it's by the Belladonna herself. Woo!
Whoa!
Right, it's crazy. We've never seen her in the flesh before, and I think she's like obscured by darkness or whatever, but it doesn't matter. The Belladonna mentions what she did to quote-unquote those girls' bodies, but it's unclear at this point what exactly that means. And she also chastises CL for bringing in the three other Unikas, that is, everyone but Tookie. The ultimate reveal here is that everyone who gets chosen for Modelland is predetermined, which raises infinitely more questions than it answers. Because at what point does Modelland begin surveilling girls? Like, by what means? And how? What are the standards, if not whatever arbitrary standards are already endemic to how you model walk through Main Street?
What say do the corporations that are implied to own stake in Modelland have in this?
Right. None of which gets answered. Regardless, CL is able to shift the situation in her favor by playing her trump card. She knows that the Belladonna intentionally replaced a certain worthy candidate with Tookie de la Creme. Dun dun dun. That's crazy. So there's 2 layers of subterfuge here from 2 layers of administration. Back on Creme and Miracle and the rest of the Pilgrims. They are being routinely attacked by quote-unquote pug-sized creatures, which is very Alex Astor in its ambiguity. Mm-hmm. These creatures are called creepers. Oh man. It becomes very clear that Creme knows her way around these parts. Hint, hint. Like she's done this before.
I wonder what that's all about.
I don't know. Tookie is harrowed by the discovery that she's just made about the true origins of her friends in Modelland, and this shatters any semblance of fun that she'd been having hitherto.
Oh, just when she was starting to settle in.
Right, just when she was starting to settle in. She runs into Bravo again, who calls her Creme on account of her love for whipped cream, which Great. This, of course, calls it to mind a different Creme and a completely different connotation to Tookie. Bravo tries to flirt some more, but Tookie has just too much on her mind.
Something tells me this may not be the first time that particular name has been uttered around Modelland, Andrew. So
One
I
could
can't
argue,
place it, but I have a feeling.
you really have a good mind for foreshadowing. You got to be one of the most foremost slam poets of our era that makes even the most snootiest of critics happy, or whatever they say about CL.
I don't know about making the snootiest of critics happy, but one time I did have an editor of a literary magazine send back a rejection that said something along the lines of, "This is very clever, but it does not gratify me completely," which I thought was an insane response.
Me when I break up over text. Tookie finds the other Unikas and reveals what she knows, that the powers that be are planning to experiment on them. They resolve to escape rather than to keep going. They get excited and unanimously declare Tookie their leader, and the plan falls on her shoulders, so they do nothing for weeks. Literally weeks.
This part drove me so crazy. It drove me so crazy. This is the first time in the story that Tookie has had a clear and actionable goal. Literally the first time where she has had a concrete, stateable desire to do a specific action, and she still doesn't do anything.
So their best chance of escape is something called a zip zap, which is just a zipper that allows you to teleport. And no, this is not teleporting magic. This is just regular teleportation. And one of these zip zaps has a 50-50 chance of taking you back to Tookie's homeland of Metopia, and another 50% chance of you going to the Diabolical Divide, where you will surely die, which is such a harrowing prospect. You know, surely something is going to go wrong and they'll have to react accordingly. They just need to find the right time to use it. And it actually is probably their only chance of escape, because we learn from one scene later on that if you attempt to scale the fence around Modelland or whatever, you will get struck by lightning, and the lightning makes you 50 years older and or turns you into an old crone version of yourself, and there's no going back from that.
There really isn't a worse punishment than becoming old and or ugly. I think we can all agree that that is the theme of Modelland. Yeah. More on that later.
There's nothing worse. There's also a random earthquake that happens for no reason, and I don't think that one matters, but there's an earthquake, which is quirky and exciting and makes you really want to be there. All of the new models are called to the M building, and it's supposed to be really sinister, but then it just ends up being an assembly about why love is bad and there is no love in Modelland, and all of the Unikas are specifically called out and threatened. Whatever is happening here, Tookie decides they have to leave now. But they don't.
There is no love in Modelland with Tookie at the bat. But they do not leave.
They do not leave. They do not leave. Instead, we go back to Creme, who has commandeered control of this group after some altercations. She's basically like making them carry her and Miracle around or whatever. Yeah. It's very funny.
Yeah, they have like a makeshift palanquin, which I did think was a kind of a delightful image.
Yeah, it's very, if nothing else, it's very visually interesting. And speaking of visuals, they are attacked by a monster who bursts from a pond, and this monster is covered with human arms like Godric the Grafted. It eats most of the pilgrims except for their arms, and then attaches their arms to its head, and Creme stops the monster from attacking Miracle just by threatening it verbally, and then it goes away, ending the scene.
It was a harrowing encounter.
Such a harrowing encounter.
It actually, that is a bit like Godric the Grafted all the way down, though, isn't it? You just kind of bully him, and then he goes away forever.
Back in Modelland, there's a commotion in the dorms as Zarpessa is having some sort of breakdown with flashbacks to her life living on the streets, but once again, Tookie refuses to divulge any information that would be embarrassing to her, which, good for you, but what about escaping? What are we doing here? Okay.
What about it?
What about
it, Andrew?
You're right.
What
There's
would
so
you
much
do,
more
huh?
to find out.
Think you're so smart.
I do. That's the problem with the show, is I think I'm smarter than I actually am. Tookie runs into Bravo, who is very forthcoming about his attraction to her, and he reveals that his name used to be Deco, and he wanted to be an architect because, of course, his name is Deco, which is like Art Deco. And it's just...
I hated this part. He's just like, I was the most brilliant child of my generation, but I was so beautiful that no one would take me seriously. They just assumed that I was a himbo, and it was so hard because I was just so privileged that no one would listen to me. They just kept giving me lots and lots of things, but they wouldn't listen to the beautiful creations of my mind.
Yes.
So I came to Bestosterone, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, that's pretty much...
Who cares?
Well, he goes to Bestosterone to look at the cool architecture, and that's why he's there. Tookie is very amenable to his advances this time and agrees to be his girlfriend and lose her, and I quote, lip virginity to him, which, God help me...
Yeah, sorry. I'm letting you flail about on that when I have nothing to add.
But tomorrow is Man Attack, which is the battle of the sexes in that arena that's being built over the course of this book. The Bestosterone boys are going to battle with the Intoxibella perspectives to determine, pretty much just to determine, I think, the Bestosterone's capacity to become an Intoxibello. So it's kind of a Wheel of Time magic system where magic is pretty much exclusive to girls, but if you're a guy and you're not crazy and you're lucky enough, you can get some semblance of magic powers. But this is all the explanation or exploration of that we're going to get this entire time.
It's kind of weird because, like, in Modelland, the boys are very much second-class citizens, but they don't mind. They're kind of like the Kens in the Barbie movie.
Yes.
But then in the outside world, the gender politics seem to mirror our own circa 2014, whenever the book came out.
Yeah.
So, like, there's something happening there. I'll save whatever analysis I'm able to muster for later, but I just want to point out how weird it is.
Right. Yeah. It's something's going on there in terms of the politics, but it's hard to parse. The event presents a good opportunity to get away while everyone is distracted, but any conspiring is stymied when CL suddenly shows up and threatens to kill the Unikas for talking to a Bestosterone boy. Again, it's very like hot and cold with CL. She's doing something very strange with the way that she presents herself. But back on the Pilgrims. Abigail, the body hair supporting girl, falls into some sort of delirium over Creme's tyranny and just shaves off all of her hair in a rage. And this reveals, according to the novel, that she is drop dead gorgeous.
Sometimes it defies analysis, and it's also not even worth it. Like, it's just weird and like uncomfortable, and there's not much to say. Like, I just point it out and move on. Like, certainly if you have analysis, I mean, you, like the royal you, anybody out there, if you have analysis of this, like, we would welcome it. But I feel like at a certain point, our approach can only just be like, look at how crazy this is. Like, we all get that this is crazy, right? And we can talk about other stuff too.
Right. This really hurt me though. This is such a missed opportunity in terms of body positivity. But if Abigail is drop dead gorgeous without body hair, then she's probably drop dead gorgeous with body hair, which I know is just like fifth wave fucking feminism, but it's just like, it's played as this giant reveal. It's just a thing. It's just a choice that you can make. And maybe this was more revolutionary in 2011, but none of that matters because they get attacked by something called a leg leech, and it eats Abigail and her mother and some other mooks, I think, and then takes their legs instead of their arms, like the pond monster, but for legs, wasting these characters and killing them irrevocably forever.
What also sucks about their characters, or particularly Abigail, is that, like, she turns on her one, like, stated political aim in this moment, and like it's kind of sets up or contributes to a pattern of this book like being very dismissive and like mocking of people who advocate for change. Like Abigail and her mom always walk around with like cardboard signs on like yardsticks that decry this beauty standard that says that all women need to shave all the time. And for Abigail to like be treated as a joke for doing that and then turn on that one political ambition of hers, betraying her one value that we know she holds, and then die again as a joke, it makes it seem like this novel just thinks very little of people who have like opinions that are valid but just unusual,
right?
Like statistically unusual. We'll see more of that, I think, but I don't know. I wanted to bring it up here since we were on the subject.
Yeah, it's a very cogent point towards this book just being fundamentally conservative. Like, don't bother even trying to change standards because you just look like a weird freak fringe protester.
It's funny that in this book that's like Harry Potter in a lot of ways, it also borrowed that kind of arc, right? Because like Hermione has the SBU arc where she's like trying to liberate house elves, and like the book randomly treats it as though she's like the butt of a joke for wanting to do that, because the house elves, they just love being enslaved as long as you treat them nice.
Right.
And of course that has turned out to be rather indicative of J.K. Rowling's politics, and I'm not necessarily saying that Tyra Banks is equivalent in any particular direction, but it is sort of interesting that it seems like this book also inherited that particular element from Harry Potter, which is definitely one of its inspirations.
For sure. And doesn't that just carry everything with it? The Unikas, meanwhile, plan to cause a blackout during Man Attack, but oh no, Tookie has been selected to be one of the contestants. Man Attack is performed in one's underwear, and you basically just stand on a 2x4 and try to push the other person off. That's the entire game. A tremendous amount of time is spent with Bravo explaining the rules of the game that will not matter in the long run. But I guess that's intentional, because the whole time Tookie's just trying to get a word in edgewise and Bravo's just explaining more rules and technicalities. So finally, Tookie is able to explain her plan, and Bravo is offended about being used, quote unquote. You see, the Unikas had thought about maybe including Bravo in their plans, but then decided that, oh, Bravo's here to see the architecture. He's not going to want to leave. So they made the assumption, and out of good-natured intent, just did not plan to include him in the escape. But he's so mad because he wants to be with Tookie no matter what. So offended, Bravo declares that his affections for Tookie have always been a sham, a little bet with his boys to see who could bag the most unsavory Bella. I think the using me thing is very contrived, very dumb, but it does make the scene way more emotionally fraught, if not worth summarizing. So it did elevate it just slightly.
It's definitely intense.
Definitely intense.
That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely intense. One of these weird makeup bomb things that are used as props in the game happens to contain a smize, which Tookie puts on herself like eyeshadow and goes Super Saiyan, and then wins all the points ever just in time for the blackout. Our heroes make their daring escape using Shiraz's ability to see in low light levels due to living in a country solely illuminated by candles.
It's her perk for choosing the candelabra in background when she was making her character.
Yes, it's very D&D 5e.
She has dark vision,
right?
Dark vision 30 feet.
They go through the Zip Zap, which had so much hay made about how there's a chance that you're going to end up in the middle of super hell. And of course, they choose the wrong path. They choose the path on the right. And that path leads them to the diabolical divide. Oh no, they're going to die.
They're going to get dumped right into Bowser's antimatter factory, or whatever that one Mario Galaxy level is. Where if you touch the goo, you disintegrate.
They're gonna fucking die. So, but no, Zip Zaps work both ways. So they just jump back in the Zip Zap and then try again and then choose the path on the right. It's very Signs of Godrilla in that the choices
if you're facing them, that's your left.
Right. It doesn't matter. So they escape. At the foot of the mountain, they very briefly run into Lizzie, who I don't fault you if you don't remember after this insane summary, but is Tookie's friend from back home who has been institutionalized on and off. She's lucid very briefly before just running off again, and I think this is her last appearance in this entire book.
And the last time that we see her, I believe she is or has just like violently maimed herself with a jagged stone.
Yes.
So whether or not she's even alive is ambiguous. Like I assume she is because, like you said, there was supposed to be a book 2, but it's unclear.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have habeas corpus, but there's no sure sign to her being dead, because before Tookie and her friends can even look for Lizzie, they are suddenly pursued by CL, who is determined to bring them back to Modelland. They end up on a bus somehow, and then the bus crashes, and then they get knocked out, and I just don't know.
Yeah, in this world of like totally illogical architecture and a billion zillion locations that are not always fully described, this action scene is sort of non-physical. Like it's impossible to tell really what is happening.
Right, which is doubly underscored by Tookie just waking up completely unharmed. All of her friends are completely fine. I mean, Lizzie is still vanished, but they recuperate and find CL just outside in a state of deranged mourning for her friends in front of the obscure obelisks. So
Dun, dun, dun.
This is where things start to resolve.
Is that what we call that? Is this what resolution is?
To me, it is.
I feel like I have a different relationship to that word.
Well, I felt satisfied that questions were being answered.
Okay, yeah, okay.
We learn that CL used to have these 3 unconventionally attractive friends who were called sister friends. She led them on an ill-fated crusade to change beauty standards up through the diabolical divide to the Modelland mountain, and unfortunately, all 3 of her friends died. She built these obelisks at the foot of the mountain as like memorials to them. So each one of them invokes a different, body type or character that corresponds to Piper, Dylan, and Shiraz. So as has already been alluded to, CL specifically chose these 3 girls because their physical descriptions matched those of her old friends. CL was able to do this because as punishment, she was added to the admissions board or whatever and just, fudge some numbers. Again, Tookie was on the list, but that was the Belladonna's doing. The other 3 girls are CL's doing. All of this means that CL was never, in fact, a crazy murderer or human experimenter. She just wanted to experiment with new body types as forms of typical beauty.
She wanted to see how marketable they were.
Right, she wanted to see how marketable they were. It's not quite so cynical, but that is the very obvious implication there.
Right. That's not the language that they use, and that's not how they want you to feel, but that is what is being described.
Correct. They all make up and decide that, yes, they should return to Modelland for some fucking reason, and they arrive just in time for the 7-7 trials. But oh no, they don't. They're too late. The doors have already closed and the trials have started. So the graduating class is going to choose which 7 Intoxibellas are going to, get chosen or whatever. But it's not too late for Creme, Miracle, and that Legizard dude to just show up in Modelland. It all worked out. They made it up the mountain.
They've been hiking for months, in case the timeline has gotten it all fuzzy here. They've been, apparently it takes, several months to climb up through the diabolical divide and reach Modelland from Metopia.
Right. The pilgrimage has rendered Creme completely unrecognizable, and Tookie is just in a state of shock about all of this. A Belladonna statue activates and begins singing a song, only for Creme to shush it. It becomes very clear that Creme and the Belladonna have some sort of relationship, or at least that Creme has the temerity to be able to speak bluntly to the Belladonna. The statue then bursts apart, revealing the Belladonna for the first time in 7-inch tall stilettos and a weird dress covered in spikes. She says the very anime line, environment stadium, and teleports them to the stadium where all the Bella trials are being held. The setting doesn't even matter. She just does this to show that she has magical powers.
Right. She just activates her Jujutsu Kaisen innate domain, and then they're in the stadium.
That's the actual quote, is environment stadium. It's just so stupid.
It's like playing a location card in the Pokemon card game, you know, like you play like a supporter stadium or something like that.
Right, it's like the Pokemon card game. Undeterred, Creme insists that Miracle be selected as a Bella, that there was some sort of mistake and she was supposed to have been chosen. The Belladonna then forces all of them to go to the OOOOOH to get exposition flashbacks. They go to the exposition flashback room to get exposition flashbacks. It's just like
6 of them.
Right, 6 of them. It's very, look at this magical mosaic that gives you propaganda at the very end of the book.
And somehow it's completely unbiased, and all of these people's memories convey only brute fact that cannot be questioned and is completely accurate. And
yeah,
I guess it technically, like you said, does resolve some questions that we had.
No problems whatsoever. So here's what happens. The Belladonna's real name is LaDonna, which is dumb because Belladonna has always been the name of the title. And she and Creme, who used to be called Cremelada, used to be friends and fellow Bellas. So back years and years ago. They were also best friends with Persimmon, one of the mannequins, before she became a mannequin, obviously. She was also a Bella. The Belladonna used to date this rather plain guy, and the cardinal rule of Modelland is that a Bella can never date a civilian. So there's all this forbidden romance type stuff that happens in high-level exposition and one-off scenes. However, at multiple points, Cremelada makes passes at LaDonna's boyfriend.
It's funny and disgusting at the same time. Like, she's like an evil person.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. She's like super, but like cartoonishly evil. So one day, LaDonna gives birth to a child in a bathroom stall during her time in Modelland, not having known that she was pregnant. So, like Age of Scorpius, there's also cryptic pregnancies here. The father is the still unnamed civilian guy that LaDonna had been dating. The current Belladonna, so like the current headmistress or whatever, who is LaDonna's mother, is enraged, and for some reason and somehow Persimmon takes the fall for this baby despite not being involved with the situation whatsoever. I guess she's just like the whipping boy and she opts to be punished in LaDonna's place. I don't get this.
I did not follow this part either. I'm so sorry. I wish I could help you. All I know is that this person, Persimmon, who was a Bella, gets like white pearled like Steven Universe and becomes like the Belladonna's like little personal maidservant that has no personality, even less personality than the other maidservants.
So anyways, this is just to establish how she ends up as a mannequin. And it turns out that the civilian man is Chris. Just kidding. It is Wingtip. It is Wingtip, the creepy, eccentric, implied to be homeless man that is seen in one single scene in an exposition dump. Great.
Amazing.
His real name is Ray Fay, which I refuse to call him, so I will continue to call him Wingtip.
Yeah, Tookie was cooking with the nickname Wingtip. It's way better than whatever his real name is.
So much better than Ray Fay. LaDonna and Cremelada escape Modelland at one point to go visit Wingtip and the baby. LaDonna goes to get formula, and of course, since they're alone, Cremelada instantly makes a pass at Wingtip, which he refuses. However, LaDonna bursts in at just the wrong moment and buys Cremelada's lie that he initiated the advance. And before that situation can resolve, the three of them are captured by Modelland agents, and they're transported back to Modelland, where LaDonna chooses to abandon her child and remain an Intoxibella. Still under the false impression about Wingtip, LaDonna demands that the baby not be returned to him. So it's all very, dramatic and harrowing. And LaDonna learns the truth just as the baby is being taken away. And in her cries of remorse, we learn that this baby's name is CL.
CL, you say? Which is crazy because we had been thinking maybe it was going to be Tookie the whole time.
Right. No,
because Tookie was like watching this like, oh my god, is this about me? Which, to be fair, is a reasonable thing to be wondering because it feels like the part in the story where that would happen.
To that point, none of this is about Tookie. Tookie is, for all we know, the real daughter of Creme and Chris de la Creme. So don't worry about that. The flashback now over, the Belladonna and Creme enter a physical altercation that ends very quickly with Creme skewering herself on a spike on one of the Belladonna's stupid dress spike things. I don't get it.
This is what would happen in real life if Grimm were to hug Isla.
Right, that's exactly. Yeah, if you could imagine the armor that Grimm normally wears.
Oh, I was thinking because Isla always has a billion blades concealed in her dress.
I was thinking about Grimm's armor spikes. I guess there's so many dangerous objects.
Mutually assured skewering. That's kind of beautiful, actually. I'm on board for it now. Putting that on my Crown Tide bingo card.
So in speaking of that, Creamy's going to be fine. I don't even know why they did this. It's so stupid. With all of that craziness out of the way, the 7-7 tournament is postponed indefinitely. The mean-spirited Guru Nars delights in announcing this to the girls. And what this creates is, of course, apocalyptic societal collapse. This is like President Jimbles announcing himself the money president levels of just chaos across the entire globe. People are throwing themselves off of buildings. Mothers smother their children so that they don't have to live in this terrible world. Factories shut down and everyone loses their homes. It's terrible. Creme and the Belladonna are both in the ugly room, which has been alluded to before. It's a prison with funhouse mirrors that make you look ugly as a form of psychological torture. Creme's on an operating table like Queen Mommy II, and she has this baby doll that she always carries around beside her. And Tookie, who again has just been passively consuming all of this information without commentary, is just confused and ashamed about her parentage, not really knowing who or what Creme ever was. And CL also gets a form of catharsis with her mother, the Belladonna, but it really just amounts to she had a mother and her mother loves her, but there was some complications in that. But the fun's not over yet, because Guru Nars and Gennaro are suddenly the bad guys for no reason. That someone put a hit out on CL or put a bounty out on her. CL gets dragged into this kangaroo court with the board. That's BORED. And she's guillotined. She gets I don't understand. She's like, my ancestors are smiling upon me, Gennaro Nars. I don't get it. But then at the very last second, a magical crown appears above her head, which means that she is the new Belladonna, which I don't know if that means that the current Belladonna died or abdicated off screen, but she's the new Belladonna, so don't worry about it. Tookie has been able to watch this entire scene because she's a forget-a-girl and no one really notices her presence or absence, but she finally gets noticed right as CL accepts the responsibilities of the Belladonna. And there's this fake-out scene where you think that CL is going to execute her for trespassing, but then she literally says, "Psych!" and makes the mean gurus kiss Tookie's feet.
Yeah.
That's the scene.
It is a bold nod to Kate Corain's Crown of Starlight.
God damn it, we can't get away from that.
It reaches across time and space.
It really does.
To reference another seminal work of young adult fiction.
It really does.
A very seminal work, if I may say so.
You need to stop saying so. Triumphant. Tookie takes a walk through Modelland. Even though things are still in a state of disarray, there's this sort of catharsis that she has with Zarpessa. Even though it's obvious that they're still not going to be friends, they still have this sort of eye-to-eye situation between each other.
They recognize each other as equally matched rivals, like Ash and Gary Oak.
Right. A lot of Pokemon metaphors in this. Then a bunch of bare-chested Bastosteros appear. Their chests are painted with like an apology from Bravo. And there was never any bet. Bravo was just saying that because he was hurt and he wanted to hurt Tookie back. He shows her some flowers that he planted and sings her a stupid song and they kiss. But Tookie doesn't want a tongue kiss.
This is like the 16th consecutive like psych out, by the way, in case you were wondering. The last 50 pages of this book, speaking of the psychological warfare of the Ugly Room, are like psychological warfare on the reader, where like suddenly you can't trust anything anybody is saying because they're about to immediately take it back and like alter the stakes of the entire story in a single phrase. Yeah. It's so hard to keep track of.
Bravo's cool about Tookie not wanting to tongue kiss, and he's like, we'll take it at your pace, baby, or whatever. And as they continue to kiss, the button that Tookie had been holding on to poetically falls away. So CL, despite being a nicer person than the old Belladonna, is still the Belladonna. So she promises to do things CL style, minus the crazy and spooky parts, as she puts it. It's still clear, though, that there are many challenges ahead of Tookie and that Modelland itself isn't going anywhere. And then CL and Tookie fly away for no reason on a magical adventure. The end.
The end.
If you are sitting here asking yourself, wait, what about the other Unikas? What about Creme and the old Belladonna? What about all of the prospective Bellas? Then you understood this summary correctly. Goodbye. Congratulations, De La Cremes! You hold in your tea-drenched hands the seventh and last of the Day of Discovery smizes. What girls everywhere dream of having. The wearer of the smize has a 91% chance of being discovered on the Day of Discovery, which, we are elated to inform you, improves the De La Creme's offspring's chance of fame and fortune. Perhaps you'd be able to rid yourself of this ramshackle asylum should your spawn reach the pinnacle of success. So with all of that rigmarole out of the way, Jay, how about you take my hand and we will ignore all of our other problems and fly through the good things about Modelland by Tyra Banks.
Well, we kind of have a tradition of pointing this out when it's done well because of how often it's done poorly. But there's a very nice verbal consent moment during that attempted tongue kissing scene where Tookie sets a boundary and then Bravo accepts it, like very frankly and kindly and without like much tension. Yeah. And it's good modeling, pun intended, for the intended teenage audience, I guess.
Right.
So that's good. It's a little Oro-like, and I like that.
Yeah, not to belabor a point that we were making during the summary, but I do think that like a lot of my personal discomfort with the Bravo-Tookie relationship was endemic to the predatory vibe of every fucking thing else. You know what I mean? Like, Bravo in and of himself is a great book boyfriend for all the reasons that you just described. And yes, they're kind of gross about it, but again, teenagers are gross about it. So I have to side with like, this is a depiction, again, not an endorsement of a very specific time in one's life. And I think Bravo is perfectly serviceable at the end of the day. I just wish the things around him might have been a little bit tweaked.
He seems in and of himself to be benign. I don't know that he's like a great boyfriend, but I don't think he's like evil or anything.
No. Yeah, I mean, he has his moments, but we've had worse here on this podcast.
We've had it so much worse. What was working for you, Andrew?
So you're going to think I'm crazy, but I legitimately believe this. The scene where Tookie first goes to her house and we meet Creme and Miracle should be taught in schools. It is so good. Not like college schools, but maybe middle school or early high school.
Sure.
I know we like to use the phrase fires on all cylinders a lot, but this is one of the first instances where it's literally doing that. The setting informs the action, informs the characters, informs their interactions, informs the tone, informs the mood, informs the symbolic landscape. They're in this crumbling house. Creme is creepy and weird. She's carrying around a baby doll. I could get an entire high school class to write a 3-paragraph essay about what this scene is doing and why it works. It is textbook scene composition / pause. And I am hard pressed to think of any other scene in any other book on this podcast that succeeds this well.
Yeah, no, it's like a perfect little micro lesson in characterization and setting, I think. And it's especially funny, I think, because of the tension between the creepiness of the setting and Creme and how those two things kind of synergize, and then Miracle being overly cheery, which on one hand kind of reads as creepy in its own right, but then also disarms us a little bit and makes us think like, okay, this is a threatening scenario, but it's like a low stakes threatening scenario, which is really perfect for something at this stage in the novel, like chronologically speaking.
Absolutely, yeah. It sets everything up so perfectly. I loved our core de la Cremes. They were just so freaking perfect in every regard. Even their contradictions in places where I think the novel is more weak, something is just really working about the family dynamics here. And yes, it relies on tired Disney tropes, but God, does it work for a reason, you know?
Yeah, and there's another scene, I think it's not too long after that, where Tookie is alone with her dad and they're just having a conversation and they have this genuine moment of bonding, which is like a reprieve for her and for us as readers, because she's been put upon by, society and the people around her for the last like 50 or 60 or so pages. And then she and her dad are having this nice moment where, if I recall correctly, he is trying to get back into acrobatic work by doing some basic stretches. And he also is an alcoholic. And so as he is drinking and stretching, he becomes increasingly angry and violent. And this moment is shattered by his addiction. And I felt really moved by that scene. Yeah. Like, again, the book doesn't do a good enough job commenting on this, but I did feel like there was something authentic happening here. Like, it's just a representation of something that happens at the end of the day, but it affected me in a way that felt like very human. And it felt like Tyra Banks was really trying to do something here, even if it isn't really explored in the rest of the book.
Right. Yeah. Again, a lot of this book, I don't know about whether or not I would assign it in a high school class, but kind of like how I learned what Candide was, I would clip chimp this into a textbook for, 9th grade lit or whatever, and have people just kind of comb through it, because that's a good example of it too. The father, I think, is ultimately a missed opportunity more than it is a good thing, but to be a missed opportunity, something could or should have been good in the first place. So I vibe with that.
That one scene, I think, shows the potential for that to have flowered into something. And who knows, maybe it would have in a later book.
Right. Which is the perennial asterisk that we're going to have for a lot of these points. Screw it. I like the names. I want to go on record saying that I think that Tookie de la Creme, Creme de la Creme, Chris Creme Crabat, Miracle, Zarpessa, whatever her last name is, Theophilus Lovelaces, like, of course they're stupid. Of course they're dumb. I try not to bring, like, Goodreads reviews of this book or books that we cover when I can, but I have to here, because so many people get hung up on the name Tookie that I'm just like, that's your problem? On one hand, and two, the names are perfectly in line with the cartoonish unreality that we're going for. Of course they're ridiculous and dumb, because this book is supposed to be ridiculous and dumb.
Yeah, it sets the tone and it synergizes with the tone of the rest of the book. It's not like the names are silly and then the book is like a grounded political thriller or something. Like, this is clearly an intentional choice that is aiming at some goal that the rest of the book is also aiming at. Like, it's not always hitting it, so the names are definitely funnier than others, and I feel like nurses being replaced with purses is a particularly egregious like name. I guess that still counts as naming because it's like an alternative word for something that already exists, but I feel like that one doesn't really work because it doesn't make sense on multiple levels. But like you said, the the De La Cremes, they all have funny names. Those all work. And even the ones that are not like puns, but are just whimsical sounding, they're fine. I mean, I can get why you wouldn't like them, but I don't think that is enough to attack or criticize the book.
Right.
Just because you don't like it. Like, it's in line with the book's mission.
Right.
It's not doing any harm,
Right.
so what's the issue?
It's like what I was saying about the Cyborg Tinkerer. You and I were made in a lab to hate that book. But that doesn't mean that what the book was trying to do was inherently bad. And it's important that I can draw the line between, yes, I hate how silly and stupid this book is, and yes, these things that are involved in the storytelling are built around furthering this one cohesive goal that the author had.
Right, because we're in like Phantom Tollbooth world over here. Like, there's just weird entities that exist ex nihilo for no reason. Of course they're gonna have silly names. Like, that is in the core of the world. Something that I really liked about this book overall was that it had some like genuine swings at symbolism. I think the most obvious one is probably the pin that she gets from Theophilus. Not like at first glance it might seem to represent like some covert feelings that he has for her, but in the end the fact that it's like scuffed and scraped and just coincidentally almost says her name is more of a reflection of like her own delusion vis-a-vis romantic feelings for him. And like the fact that we get to see that develop over the course of the story is pretty nice. Like, is it executed perfectly? No. Mostly what these scenes look like is she pulls the pin out of her pocket and she like looks at it longingly, like that one Wolverine looking at a photo meme or whatever. But like the idea is there. It communicates something to me. I think another one that I really liked was the way that the school that they start out at is a former factory, which is of course a suggestion that the impoverished students are destined to be thrown out as the cheap accessories that were once made at the factory are. Like, not only are the students going to become factory workers, which they already are in one sense, but they're just as disposable as the things that factory once produced to this larger society. And like, that's great. That's cool. I like it.
There's also a couple of things along those lines that I was really compelled by or found really fascinating. There, for example, is something really associatively tasty about equating the belladonna with statues. So we see belladonna statues, but we never see the belladonna herself, and eventually she bursts out of one. There's so much endemic to that association, like preservation, particularly the preservation of an ideal form. Like, the statues that we know as classical today were certainly not the body types of every Greek or Roman person or whatever. So it follows the same logic there. I do feel like something was being done there, or that at least Tyra Banks and her ghostwriter understood that statues carried some sort of connotation to them. Additionally, I also loved the belladonna's baby CL being wrapped in the Centura in a dorm bathroom. There's some confluence of the sacred and the profane. It's very, again, just kind of tasty. I don't have much to say about it other than that I really like it visually.
It's like a little nugget of intentionality or brilliance. Another one that I was really into was the way that like many of the buildings in Modelland spell out Modelland. We don't get every letter, but we get most of them. And we get about half of them, I would say.
Sure.
And it's like an additional suggestion that Modelland is this place that is so obsessed with itself. It continues to declare itself. Like, even when you are there, you are constantly being reminded that you are in Modelland. And it almost becomes like a signifier that just signifies itself over and over again. It's like a crazed insistence on its own importance. Which kind of ties into some themes that I was picking up on that I was really into. There's the beginnings of like a tacit criticism of capitalism. Like, we learn at one point that the board members, not the BORED board members, but like there's this board of members of corporations that in some way have a stake in Modelland, and they're framed as sinister and obscure and malicious, right? Like, they are responsible for the vast majority of society, at least in Metopia, being wage slaves, kind of, that like exist only to purchase from and then also work in this fashion industry that controls the entire world. And I think that Modelland's superficiality, although we can also see places where Modelland is treated as a good thing, but I think that there is, at least on some level, a suggestion that it is like superficial and that it is a broken institution that needs to be fixed. And I think that the letters are a part of that larger theme.
I had no idea that that was the case, but you're right. All of the buildings correspond to letters. There's definitely more of a critique of Modelland than could even be gleaned from a cursory read of it. It deserves credit for, again, like I was mentioning earlier, just being this farcical satire of something that Tyra Banks or whoever has certainly gone through and experienced. And I think no matter what fiction should do is reflect one's own lived experience. For example, to that point, I am enamored with the tone. I love the voice. I love it. It's like what I said about Handbook for Mortals, about how I think it's so interesting that the narrator of that, Zaid, found Show Black sexy, because it belies living in this world that at least I'm not familiar with. I don't know a lot about theater. I don't know a lot about modeling. So immersing myself in this fashion forward world, admiring you in a worldview that is not your own. Like, I don't care about knockoff handbags. I don't care about matching colors or whatever, but this book does. And it presents through the lens of speculative fiction, this lived experience so incredibly clearly that I find this book incredibly valuable for no other reason than to get that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, that makes it stand out from most of the books that we read on here, which often feel like they are trying to set or chase some kind of genre trend. This book is just like, here is my twisted view of the world. Right. But like, it's that, but like very, very genuinely. Like, it is not being cynical about that at all.
No.
And so it represents, of course, all of the shortcomings of just being that raw, which we'll get to, but then also all of its strengths. And I think there's something really to be said about what you were just saying, which is on some level that it feels good to learn something about another person's perspective or just about the world in general. And there were moments reading this where I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm learning something. Like, I had no idea how important that smizing was in modeling, but the fact that it's distilled into like a magic item in this world that has the power to alter your fate really emphasized for me that that's something that you have to care about, I guess, when you're being photographed or like walking down the runway. And I think that's really cool. Like, now I know something that I didn't know before.
I felt a palpable sisterhood between the Unikas, which I think is just worth calling out. Obviously, there's the asterisk that they completely fall off the face of the planet at the end of the book, but...
Literally.
But up until that point, I think a good faith attempt was made to represent that beauty comes in all forms. I think thematically the characters underscore the things that they're supposed to. I just don't know if it was enough at the end of the day.
Yeah, there's like a part of me that feels like in critiquing this part of the book, I'm talking to one of like my former undergrads or something, because I want to encourage, I guess, Tyra Banks to continue to try to be inclusive, but I want to be a justified level of critical about how she falls short of being representative.
Sure.
I know you do too, but it puts me in like a headspace of like talking to somebody who's like between, I don't know, 16 and 20, and not like an adult woman who has had like multiple more careers than I have had. Because like you're saying, I think a good faith effort to do something kind is here, but it is like not quite there. But yeah, yeah. I really like especially the way that Creme's character is like an encapsulation of the shallowness of the non-model land side of this world. Creme is somebody that is obsessed with the appearance of wealth above all else, which is kind of paralleled in how Model Land is obsessed with like insisting upon itself. So you, like we said, Creme only eats bananas that have no spots. She owns this really shoddily constructed house that is furnished to look really stately, but the chairs all have holes in them that are patched over with patches that perfectly match the color and fabric, but really they're falling apart, right? None of this is very subtle, but it is very funny and very appropriate, I think, for a book that's targeting this age group. Creme also serves like a greater narrative function, which is that she acts as sort of like a synecdoche for all of the types of people eager to get into Modelland, which also then gives us world building information, right? Like, it tells us a little bit how we're meant to perceive this culture and also how desperate people are to get into this place. Like, it is truly their maybe only chance out of abject poverty.
Sure.
And so as much as we might judge Creme rightly for being a terrible mother and just unpleasant and fake person, we can't help but at least understand why she is that way to an extent, right? Because what is the alternative? You can flee to another country, but even there, they're celebrating TDOD just 6 hours later or whatever, because they do account for the time difference, which I thought was sort of funny. But like, there's no escape from Modelland. Like, it is this one place that only few people get to inhabit, but it's also everywhere. It's like, it's kind of a metaphor for like imperialism a little bit in that way. Modelland, the mountain, is like the metropole, and everything else is these provinces that are doomed to be extracted from. In this case, mostly extracted, like, have human capital extracted from them, which is especially fucking sinister.
She is such a good character, and you can glean so much about the book, the world, Tyra's intentions, just by picking apart her character. The tragedy is that she ends up fighting monsters for most of her screen time, but I digress. Where we see her come into her own, and I think even diegetically it's addressed through Tookie, that you really find it hard to hate her for the same reasons that you outlined. She is emphatically a victim of this society that incentivizes you to be like her. I think there's such a cogency in what the book is trying to say and the character that Creme is, and it's so good. It's so good.
There's a quote that I think especially emphasizes that for me. It was on my page 64. It's a quote from Tookie quoting Creme. A vintage dress was as bad as a ripe banana, an object way past its expiration date. Yeah. Which is amazing because that is a contradictory statement, right? Like, that is internally contradictory.
Yeah.
A vintage dress is not as bad as a ripe banana because a ripe banana is not past its expiration date. It is ready now to be eaten. It is not yet expired. But this tells us everything about Creme's like warped point of view, where things that are current are already too late. You have to be trying to set trends or be ahead of them. You can't just participate. That's the only way to survive. And she's doing it to a degree. She's participating in this system to a degree in order to secure fortune, not just for her, but for at least one of her kids. Sure. Which is an admirable goal, I think. And certainly we could question, how genuine her desire to see Miracle successful is, and like to what extent that is really just a way to achieve like wealth or whatever for herself. But like, she at least seems to like Miracle, and so like, can you hate her for wanting like her kids to be cared for? I don't think so.
I can't. I don't know if it's exactly appropriate for the good things section, but I wanted to call out in sort of an SBU meta way that this book is the exact reason, it's the synecdoche or the shibboleth or whatever, that I told Milo Winter not to worry about giving her characters a distinctive voice, at least until he's sure that everything else is in place. So this book is a cartoon, and I mean that mostly /pause. Everyone in this book talks like a different stock cartoon character, which creates, again, things I don't like, but I just have to say it's not inherently a bad thing when you're dealing with this farcical, satirical tone in this stock cartoon story. I'm just saying that Modelland is a cautionary tale about making your characters as quote-unquote voicey as possible, because you will lean on stereotypes and you will cause offense. In Modelland's case, it's a little bit more even-handed in how ridiculous it is, but even it causes harm in certain points. So I just say all of this to just say, do as Modelland says, not as it does. Because if you aren't trying to make a stupid fucking cartoon and you just lean into making your characters as voicey as possible, you'll end up with Shiraz and Piper, and you'll end up with Dylan. And again, all of them just sound like what the author thinks these people sound like versus any authentic representation of these people.
It's trying to simultaneously be a parody and then also be like just fun and games.
Yeah.
And I think the moments that the book fails the most are when those two things come into tension with one another.
Yes.
But anyway, your point about be careful, Milo Winter, not to do this when you're giving your characters more distinct voices is very well taken, I think. And I hope he hears it. I hope he hears it. This is maybe not fair, but it's not fair in a way that benefits the book, so I'm going to do it anyway. Okay. There's a quote about the Hudson River in the book's acknowledgments where Tyra Banks is like, "Thank you, Hudson River, for being there with me as I wrote, even though you're not as blue as I would like you to be." And I really like this because it shows that she's capable of recognizing the fact of her own perception on some level. And that makes me think that she would have a pretty good chance of actually fixing some of these problems were this book an early draft and not a published product already. Like, yeah. I think that she would have probably been receptive. Well, I guess I don't know this because I don't know this book didn't have sensitivity readers, but I'm going to assume it did not have very many at the very least. But I think that she would be willing to hear what they had to say had she had them, or was she given them now and a chance to rewrite this book? Like, she understands that her desires are not synonymous with reality, that sometimes the real world can be disappointing and confusing and contradictory. And I think that fiction needs to tend to that needs to do more than just represent it. And I think she really is trying to do more than just represent it. I think she definitely fails at times.
Sure.
But there's like, I guess fundamentally what I'm trying to say is that there's like a real earnestness to this book. It really wants to like express a person's worldview.
Yes.
And that's just so refreshing. And it's something that wouldn't normally be a compliment, I don't think, like in any other setting other than this podcast. Like that would be taken for granted. But you can't here. In this setting, it's nice to know that it's actually happening.
I do think that there's so much value in, again, Tyra Banks exploring her worldview through the lens of speculative fiction. And it may not be the best good thing in the world, but it's something that you can't take for granted.
I mean, Tyra Banks is certainly somebody that has lived a unique life, like, in the history of the human species, I would wager.
Sure.
And so, like, there is inherent value in getting to see her genuine perspective represented. Like, even if it is one that is incomplete or flawed or even harmful.
Sure.
I think it's cool to get to know what one of, like, probably the richest, most famous, most comfortable, most widely traveled people ever to live thinks about what it is to be a human person. Like, that is definitionally a unique point of view.
But God, does it cause some harm on the way?
Yeah, I guess we better get over to that, huh?
Well, we should, but I just want to say that this is genuinely, I don't know how the length is going to compare, but this is one of my favorite books that we've read for this podcast in so long. I was so refreshed by this book. Yes, it was overlong. Yes, there's a lot of things in it that I find at best eyebrow raising, at worst deeply, deeply uncomfortable, but I'm just so glad that we've been able to just get Tyra Banks's opinions distilled in this way. And I think that there is value here. I think that literature was created. I don't know exactly how. I don't know how much, Tyra Banks just gave notes to a ghostwriter, but it cannot go unsaid. So I don't want, no matter what the timestamps end up being of our sections, to give the impression that I think this book is like abjectly terrible to the extent that a Rich Shapiro book, for example, would be just like ontologically evil.
Yeah, this book has goodwill and good faith on its side, I think. Coming our direction from the book.
Right.
It wants to put good things into the world genuinely, and it is attempting to do those things by good means. When it falls short honestly.
Right. So I think that's what we're going to get into next. Dear Tookie, do you know how much I detest you? How the very sight of you makes me want to stab you through the heart. Why do you rise every day? What is the point of you even existing? Of breathing this earth's precious air which rots each time you exhale? Do you know how much I hate you? How the very thought of you continuing to inhabit this world makes me ill? Why are you even writing this right now? What is the point of you even lingering any longer? Of using up ink and killing trees to record thoughts that no one will ever care to see? I hope you go to sleep tonight and don't wake up. Oh, how beautiful the world will be tomorrow with you dead. Oh, I can't wart. I swear to God there's an R there, but it may be an ebook transliteration issue, but I hope it's just wart. I can't wart. She's speaking Oktoberfestian. Just go for all of us. Regretfully yours, Tookie de la Creme. Well, Jay, you seemed very keen on leading us into the bad things, so I figured you should start us off and tell us maybe some places where Tyra Banks, famous celebrity and model, might have fallen short of her literary vision for this project.
This is a really big pet peeve of mine. So it is the frustration is being directed at Mrs. Banks, but know that it is not exclusively being directed at her. She's being sort of attacked by proxy in this moment.
Okay.
Something that I often see fiction do that I hate is write a newscaster into the story, like usually in the form of characters just watching TV, and then the newscaster just doesn't sound anything like a TV newscaster or a journalist. This probably bothers me disproportionately because I worked in journalism briefly, so I know how you're supposed to sound when you write an article and when you read it aloud. But here is an example from page 40 where a newscaster is talking about the smizes starting to show up. He says, "Now 4 smizes have been found. A gang of hooligan females spotted the device floating in a condemned swimming pool in Pitter-Patter today. They rushed the barbed wire fence and dove into the murky, stagnant, unfit for human contact water. An underwater riot broke out, severely injuring the 3 girls. One is in critical condition at Chevera Hospital." Like, it doesn't really sound the way that a news blast sounds. Mm-hmm. It's not quite choppy enough, and it's not quite making enough of an effort to sound more objective than it actually is. Like, it has a little bit too much personality, and somehow, like, the sentence construction just isn't quite there. You could argue that this is just because, like, the book is silly, and so the newscasters are, like, more casual too. Mm-hmm. But I feel like I see this exact same thing happen in a lot of fiction, and it's always in the same way. Like, the newscasters doesn't sound like a newscaster.
I would have been more inclined to, like, make fun of you had I not just, like, made a big rant about polyester in Powerless books. So I will not make fun of you and just say it is weird. I think it's a fair accusation to level against Tyra Banks here, who is, like, intrinsically involved with the media by virtue of her career. I would think that of all things, sounding like a newscaster is one of the things that I would expect from Tyra Banks. I will hold space for you to acknowledge that that's a pet peeve of yours, but I find it hard to be on your level with that. But again, you know, I have biases there. I've never worked in media, so I don't know what you're supposed to sound like.
I'm fighting a proxy war with her.
Right.
But that's really, you know, with every other author and TV show writer that I have, like, encountered this with, because it's just so irritating. Like, I guess people don't listen to newscasters as much these days anymore. They're too busy listening to, like, Hassan Piker or something, so maybe they don't know how CNN sounds.
But in 2011, like, you know, it might have been different.
Exactly.
So exactly. I don't know. That's really funny. I think that's just a place where the tone is working against the novel. As much as I do like it, I think it's just when you try to be more realistic or grounded or whatever the word is, it will work against your novel inherently.
So I don't necessarily mind the, like, Greek chorus style narration that introduces the beginning and ending chapters. It's something that, like, I think if a student of mine turned in, I would advise them against, just, like, because it isn't really adding anything, but it's certainly not harming the story. At least I don't think so. But what I do think is harming the story is that what the narrator says is almost always then just stated in normal exposition at the beginning of the chapter. The narrator will go on this like very flowery monologue that tries to explain what's happening in a lot of jokey language, and then we'll just get it again more frankly, I mean relatively frank considering the tone of the book, right afterwards, which renders everything we just read unnecessary. So I think if we're gonna have this omniscient narrator cutting in on us, they need to actually be doing something that is transformative, you could say.
This is something that I was going to say for my suggestions, but since you bring it up, one of the things I would recommend to Tyra Banks is just to make a copy of the Word doc or whatever that you're doing for this project and just see what it is like if the Greek chorus narrator narrates the entire book, because I have the same problem as well. It's often, if not always, very, very redundant or just exists to drop very specific proper nouns. And I know it comes and goes, but for much of the prose itself, it's so similar to the way that normal narration is described that I kind of wonder if maybe we should just opt for being as voicey as possible and just running with this Greek chorus lady, this darling lady or whatever, and seeing what that does. I don't know if that would make a good book. You're going to have to make that call for yourself, but...
Yeah, I'm so concerned about the darling count if we choose to make this character the voice of the narration. But you know what? If you try it and it doesn't work, you've still learned something.
Right,
so it's maybe
right.
better to try than not to try.
It's the same thing I was saying about killing Lyra in book 2 of Zenith or whatever. Like, just give it a try and see if it works. If not, just excise the darling lady completely. If not, then see what it's like for the entire narration to sound like it does in the italic section.
It would at least be more internally consistent, which I think is almost always a win.
Right.
Over something that feels patched together.
Right.
I have a feeling that like some people are gonna hope that I have something interesting to say about like the homophobic stereotype. So there's this one guru that's like a drag queen basically, and at first Tookie thinks that he is a woman, and then when she learns that he is a man, she's like, ooh, I just can't even believe he's a man, and there's like an implication of disgust. And I don't really have anything to say about this character. I think it's just an expression of maybe some latent homophobia that Tyra Banks is or was dealing with at the time. I don't really think there's anything more to it than that. He falls victim to like all of the tropes of a harmful homophobic stereotype. You know, he's overly effeminate, he's catty, his femininity is treated as an aberration, he randomly becomes a villain. We've seen it all before, and unfortunately I just don't really have anything else to add on that front vis-a-vis gender or sexuality, but it does need to be acknowledged. So there's that. I'm sorry if that breaks somebody's heart out there. If you have like deeper thoughts about him, please feel free to drop them in the comments. I will be reading all of them, but I just personally don't have like much more of a take on it than that.
So there are a lot of asterisks to this bad thing, and that just means, in other words, that it's not really a bad thing, but it was a barrier to my enjoyment, and I want to explore it here with you guys. Despite everything I said in the content warning, I kind of don't like the fact that we end up with the exact same Modelland that we had in the beginning, just under a new belladonna. CL's character is very opaque and very variable. Even in moments of triumph, she's doing something bad, like forcing all the mean gurus to kiss Tookie's feet or something. And maybe this is the point. Maybe in book 2, Tookie will come into her own, and we will learn that even under CL, Modelland just has to fucking go. But I just feel like this book is fundamentally conservative. And it's the lack of movement that shines a light on these missed opportunities. So we don't get a moment where we appreciate the Unica's beauty, especially in front of other people. They just disappear by Act 3. They're not paraded in front of everyone as the face of the new Modelland. That family that was really big on body hair, they die horribly. They're eviscerated by a monster that doesn't come back. They're not welcomed into Modelland as the new age of Intoxibellas. What if instead of CL and Tookie flying away, they open the gates and then all of these unconventionally attractive Bellas march in? Like, that would still be something in the way of showing this book's ultimate intent. And even with what we have, it just feels like it's just going to be the same thing all over again. And again, I know there's a lot of asterisks there. Like, anything could happen in the perspective book too, but I just have to call this out because it feels like such a missed opportunity. We eviscerate or forget about the people that are supposed to underscore this point.
The motto, or the unspoken motto of this book, rather, is liberation for me, but not for thee.
Yeah.
Like, Tookie and CL are worthy of liberation and happiness and not being judged for the way they look because they're the main characters who we identify with.
Right.
But all of the characters who vocally protest for change are the butts of jokes. And we also shouldn't forget that Piper has, like, this nominally anti-monarchist political leaning that, like, is in tension with her mother because her mother is the queen of San Calor, whatever city she's from.
Right.
But then we learn later in the novel that actually she isn't like she isn't anti-monarchy, and like she doesn't actually care about affecting political change that would liberate her population.
Yeah.
What she really wants to do is just piss her mom off. Like, all of her politics stem from wanting to make her mom mad. And yes, you could say like, oh, well, she's a teenager. Lots of teenagers are like that. I'm sure that that's true. But unfortunately, in this novel, it's part of a pattern where anybody who advocates for radical change is a joke or disingenuous. But our main characters are allowed to achieve like a kind of personal liberation from rising to the top of the system that's already extant.
Yes.
So I don't know.
There are way too many acronyms in this book. I hate it. I really don't know if this is just in tension with the ideas of this book where acronyms are something that the author really cares about. I get the vibe from what I understand of Tyra Banks, which again isn't much. I think the only thing I knew about her before this book was that she had a cameo in the Hannah Montana movie. I really don't like all the acronyms. There's spilled, smizes, TFLD.
What's the hospital one?
Feds.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've had enough of Ben Shapiro already, so I just really don't want to hear anything more about that. I don't really know what my suggestion is there implicitly other than just get rid of them, and that may just be like an SBU Andrew like problem, but I really just have to voice the fact that it's just so alienating.
It kind of gets tiring after a while just because you get familiar with like, this is the punchline that's about to happen, you know, like Tookie's gonna be like, oh, I'm looking for some commonplace thing, and then a Modelland character's like, do you mean the funny acronym?
Right.
And she's like, yeah, I guess I do, and then she goes there.
Right, exactly.
Speaking of patterns that repeat themselves, I think this book's biggest structural problem is that it doesn't have so much a plot as like an interminable procession of events, and you can see that on both large and small scales. I kind of foreshadowed this critique when I really emphasized in the summary how I didn't like that all the Intoxibellas are just brought out one after the other and we have to see them each in a row.
Yes.
The same thing also happens when CL goes and picks up all of the girls that she's taking to Modelland. We meet each one of them one after the other. They get to say their line, they get their little splash animation, and then we move on to the next one. And then on like an even broader scale, most of what happens in Modelland is just the girls go to a wacky class where they meet a wacky professor.
Yes.
They are psychologically or physically tortured, but then they're magically okay at the end of it. And then another little filler plot beat happens, like maybe some tension with Zarpessa, and then we have another class with another wacky professor. Wacky professor reference, not intentional, just a phrase that came to mind. And it doesn't really build to anything. I mean, it does eventually, but So I came across this quote recently in The Art of Perspective, which is in the same series of books as The Art of the Poetic Line by James Langenbach that I've referenced a billion times. This is by a different guy. But there's this quote that's like, there's a difference between a plot that operates on a and then system and a plot that operates on a because system. And in the latter, events logically follow one another almost inevitably, right? Like, this has this consequence, that's because. But this book is very firmly an and then plot. Like, we could have gone to most of these classes in any order, and you could still summarize the book as they go to class, and then they go to class, and then they go to class. It's never they go to class, and because this thing happened with this professor, it has this effect in the next class. None of that. It's just a procession of occurrences. And I know you made fun of me, Andrew, for saying that about a book previously, where I said that it wasn't so much a book as it just was a sequence of chronologically arranged events. But I hope I was able to make my point more clearly now, because I think that this one has that problem even more severely than the last one.
Yeah, and I was going to refute you or make fun of you or do something dumb, but I do ultimately agree with you. What I was thinking of was the fact that they went to the War of the Words class, and this reawakens like old insecurities in Dylan, and that's what ultimately leads to the forming of the Unikas and them establishing themselves as a cohesive group. But if I really think about it, nothing bound that specific class to that specific outcome. It could have been any or all of the classes. It's very powerless in its modularity there. So and that's a big problem I have with the entire book, is just so much of that great swampy middle just feels completely modular and interchangeable, to the point where the redundancy really impedes my ability to enjoy the book. It's just very hard to identify like the Freytag pyramid, especially in that sequence.
I think it's a product of that like cartoonish quality that you were talking about, which in some ways is not a bad thing, but it feels at times like the book is written in 30-minute TV show episodes to be aired on Saturdays, and like the writers know what the first 3 episodes are that like really affect the plot, and they know how those things resolve in the final 3 episodes, and then there's just like 6 or 8 episodes in the middle that don't really matter and can kind of be rearranged, and like, sure, you know, they might tweak things that eventually pay off at the end, but like really everything is at the beginning and at the end.
Yeah, filler episodes, if you will.
Yeah, you could say that. That's a great phrase.
So earlier you brought up in that example of the different Unikas and how that felt kind of interchangeable and modular and the same thing over and over. And it called to mind, not exactly in the same way, but just pertaining to them. This is especially one place where I feel like the line between representation and endorsement was so blurry that I have a lot of difficulty accepting it. It is just the handling of foreign cultures. So it is very, very obvious, as we pointed out, that all of these countries represented in this book are just real Earth countries that speak their real Earth language, just with a silly cartoonish name. Like people from Très Jolie, they speak French. People from Sweden, Nord, or whatever, they speak some Nordic language. But with Labrian specifically, the Middle Eastern, Tunisian, Moroccan, or whatever analog that Shiraz hails from, there's not the same thing happening with that. We get a phoneticized line of dialogue in the Labrian language that is just a string of vowels with diacritics on them, which is just bad. Like, I don't remember any attempts at conlangs, so this sticks out, especially since this, again, is supposed to be like Arabic or something. It's that singularity that bothers me more than anything. If Très Jolie were cartoonish in the same way that Labrian was, I may not have the same issue, but Why is Arabic implicitly othered in a way that's just so different from any of the other languages that we get in this book? I really find that, just to use an internet term, problematic. And I really wish that Tyra or your ghostwriter, you had found an Arabic speaking person to just give you some Arabic words or give you some insight into how an ESL Arabic speaker would actually render English. Because I mean, I only have anecdotal evidence for this, but I feel very confident that the way Shiraz speaks is completely inaccurate. It's so singular, and it's so pointed against this one language that I feel like there's something really wrong here at its core.
It feels like punching down.
Yes.
And there's something that happens that's similar with Kalamani, who's the girl from Chakra. First of all, just calling it Chakra feels like disrespectful in a way that calling France Treasury doesn't feel disrespectful, or calling Germany Oktoberfestia doesn't feel quite as... I mean, that one does like offend me personally, but I can recognize that in the broad scheme, it is not as offensive as calling the India analog Chakra. And then there's a line where Zarpessa tells Tookie to go ask her friend from Chakra about karma if she wants to understand why what goes around comes around or whatever. And again, this is like a similar problem to what was happening with the language with Shiraz, but about, I don't know, it just feels like it's more about the culture broadly as opposed to the language specifically.
Right.
Where it feels mean-spirited.
Yes.
I guess that's really all I have to say about it.
Yeah, it sticks out really, really badly, and it impedes a lot of the things that we're supposed to accept about like all of these girls being sisters. And it's especially in tension with Tookie knowing every terrestrial language. So if no one else, even if everyone else is just as problematic as the narration itself is, Tookie alone should be like, hey, wait, you guys, like you guys are being really ignorant about this. There's a rich cultural history here that you're completely minimizing, but we don't get that. And it comes down again to singularity. I know this book is a cartoon. I know this book is a farce, but where it just goes too far in a few places. And it's always in these places where, like Jay said, it's punching down.
It's doing what is formulaically basically the same joke to a bunch of different cultures, but it feels different applied to different cultures because of those cultures' relative level of power and their respective histories relative to colonization. I think that's what it comes down to. This is maybe like not fair of me, but I'm going to say it anyway. I was kind of hoping that after like 100 pages of exposition and build-up, not just exposition, Tookie would get to Modelland in a more like unconventional way than just being chosen by a scout, right? Like, this is maybe me critiquing the book on terms that are not its own, right? Like if the book wants to have Tookie get to Modelland and be genuinely chosen because that's important for its mission, I get that. But there's something kind of unexciting about hearing about the girls always getting taken. And then she just gets there the way that we would expect her to get there. And later we do learn that she was selected under unconventional circumstances, but that doesn't really change the fact of her just going there the usual way. Like, I don't know exactly what I was hoping for. I guess initially I was hoping that maybe she would have to scale the mountain, but then we learned that that would be unfeasible because it takes so long to do. But I'm sure that Banks could come up with some way if she thought about it for a little bit. I trust her to whip something up.
That's actually something that I wasn't even going to suggest, but it was always in the back of my mind. This didn't come up in the summary, but there's a point right after Tookie gets in the campus bag that the scout, CL, flies up in the air and then descends into the ground. And that marks a chapter end. So I'm like, oh, wait, is Modelland this creepy subterranean world? Is this mountain just a facade and the real underbelly of the Modelland world down in the actual subterranean hellish world? So I think it could be as easy as just having CL do something unconventional in her flying that would address Jay's issue here, because that was something, again, that I kind of would have wanted, is maybe this inversion of expectations where, I don't know, there's something more hellish to Modelland from the very get-go that we're not expecting, but we don't get that.
We don't get that at all. Speaking of CL, I have to say this. The way that her poetry is being handled right now is just not working at all. Like, we're introduced to her as not just like a proficient poet, but like a poet who is particularly skilled in writing a political subject matter. Like stuff that's so undeniably good, it has the potential to like alter the Overton window and like change the language of politics.
Sure.
But whenever she actually gives us poems, and we do get poems from her on the page, they are always just these like vague, kind of rhymey, kind of free associative-y, vibey, like nothings.
Yes.
It's impossible for me to imagine, and I know that like most people don't have the exposure or interest in poetry that I have, and so like most people probably won't care as much. But if you have like the money, just hire a poet to help you get this stuff right. Because I don't know, right now it feels like the novel's just lying to me, because I can't imagine CL actually writing anything that would be politically important at all. Especially not considering where her character arc ends in this book.
Right.
She just ends up as like in charge of the system that supposedly she on some level wanted to drastically alter. And I know this is where we get into the like, what about book 2 thing? But we don't have book 2.
Right.
So this is all we got.
Right. I actually completely agree with you on that front, even as someone who's not very well versed in poetic conventions or anything like that. It's just so silly. There are all of these stupid songs and stupid poems, and they just, again, they're in line with the cartoonish vibe that we're going for, but they veer from, you know, a little bit satirical into kindish, you know, like they just feel like they're for preschoolers when so much of this book is about much more harrowing things than that.
Yeah, like on some level, not everything can be a joke, because then the book like loses all of its impact. So like you have to be serious sometimes. And I think that maybe in the guise of the lyric would be a good way to get some of that in, right? Because it is a little bit more veiled. It does require a little bit more investigation to fully understand. It could be a place where the book like tips its hand a little bit more about what it wants to say thematically, but only to readers who are willing to put in the effort to actually think about it a little bit, interpret it a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think that is out of line with Tyra Banks's goal here. CL is always there when I felt like the narrative was stating its theme. So to have a little bit more thought be put into that would go just such a long way. So I actually, I mean, I would make fun of you for being a poet, but I really can't here. There's a furtive attempt to make the board, or at least Guru Nars, a little bit of a sleeper villain towards the end. And I just really can't say anything about it other than that it's too much too late because of just how diluted they are in the rest of the shit that happens. I know every class has a guru and every class has something going on in it that alludes to some political tension in Modelland, but I didn't know who Guru Nars was when I first read it. I had to go back and figure out like which of the insane quirky teachers that they establish over 5 dumb scenes this person was, and why it was so supposed to be at least powerful that they kiss Tookie's feet at the end of it.
Yeah, it sucks. It's really baffling.
It's just so baffling. And there's just so many other characters that could have been drawn into the fore for this to, you know, ultimately work, but we just have to have these gurus at the end of the day.
I mean, forget drawing more characters into the fore. We have this tension finally between all of the relevant characters when Tookie, her mom, Miracle, CL, and the Belladonna are all in the same room. Oh, and Persimmon too. Like, I don't think we need any more than that.
No.
There's like already so much happening between them that we need to work out that like we could work out across a 600-page novel. We don't need to like include this political drama where the gurus are vying for power. That can be something that happens in the second book, where, you know, all of a sudden this power vacuum that was created was filled as quickly as it was created. Now CL is the new belladonna. She's adjusting to that role. She inherits, whatever is going on between the gurus. That's what we can talk about, like the internal politics of Modelland.
Right.
And I think it'd be welcome at that point, because the politics of Modelland versus its corporate overlords has also been foreshadowed. So it would be a good time for all of that to, what's the verb version of confluence? To conflue. To
conflue these people. We don't get a goodbye scene to so many fucking characters in this book. And it again, whatever, series, not series, just assuming that this is just ever supposed to have been book 1, what is the resolution to the belladonna? What is the resolution to Creme and Tookie's relationship? What is the resolution to the Unica's relationship? And it doesn't have to be a full stop. It just has to be something. And instead we get nothing. They literally fly away. And I just think that's such a terrible missed opportunity. Again, whether or not this is supposed to be a series or not, that we just vanish. We just vanish and just forget about all of our troubles.
God, and that ending really emphasizes the fact that Tookie just doesn't get to make a lot of choices in this book. Like, at the end, CL just takes her hand and they fly away, not into the literal sunset, but into like a pan up into the sky as like the credits start to roll. And I don't know, I was just left with the distinct feeling that like so much happened to her.
Right.
And she did very little. She didn't do nothing, but she didn't do much.
For sure.
And she does feel like a pretty shallow protagonist at the end of the day, like you were saying much earlier in this episode now. Sorry that I'm just now catching up to you on that, but you're right. She is boring.
Hey, as long as you admit it eventually, that's what matters. You come around to it eventually. She speaks every language. She has all of these like therapy things that she does. Like there's Tookie as a person is not uninteresting, but Tookie as a character, and especially as a main character, is super uninteresting. And that dissonance is completely undue, at least as far as I'm concerned.
I feel like we got to talk about the superpowers somehow. It's just like, it's crazy that there's all these superpowered individuals running around, but then the powers never feature and they don't even use them in circumstances where it might be useful to do so. Like,
right.
I mean, theoretically, CL could shapeshift into anybody at any point and get out of this punishment that the belladonna has subjected her to. And that's just one thing she could do. I mean, she also has like 3 different ways to mind control people. Like, surely everybody on the planet is vulnerable to at least one, if not multiple of them.
Right.
And I feel myself like being sucked into the CinemaSins whirlpool right now, because like I feel myself reaching towards that little ding. Like, this is a plot hole. This doesn't make sense.
Sure.
Like this is weird.
Yeah, and there's the execution of it, and there's also the implication of it, because I don't know about you, Jay, but I was expecting at some point that Tookie would realize that she herself is a 777 and learns all of these powers that we get alluded to, but no, she's just Tookie. And even the other Unicas, they don't have like, there's not a shape-shifting one, there's not a mind-controlling one, there's not a cloning one, they're just unconventionally attractive, and that's the beginning and the end of their entire character.
The thing is, though, like, it's not just the superpowers that, like, baffle me about this. It's that there is another layer of mind control that gets introduced and then forgotten about. It's around page 240-ish. We learned that all of the fashion shows that the girls have grown up watching don't actually even happen. Not the ones that are broadcasted, not the ones that are recorded and then aired asynchronously, not the ones that they've seen live. All fashion shows are the result of hypnosis that any Bella can do who owns a Centura, whereby they hypnotize the audience to see exactly what they want them to see vis-a-vis clothing, vis-a-vis, I don't know, like stage presence, expression, whatever. So, like, not only does this completely annihilate the need for some of the other mind control powers, it also raises questions about why the girls are doing any of this modeling training that they're doing if it all just comes down to who can mind control the best.
Right.
And it also raises so many other questions that I know that the thing doesn't want me to be asking because they're not even fun to ask. They feel like, I feel like a Poindexter even bringing them up, but it's like, if you can just mind control people, like, why does this world revolve around fashion to begin with? Like, why not just mind control them to do, like, whatever? Like, it just completely falls apart.
Yeah, that's just completely emptying to call out. It's so sad. Because like you're describing chameleon, seduction, excite to buy, but that's not really what's happening there. It's just a completely separate thing. So, yeah, no, I'm not going to talk a lot about the magic powers because they don't fucking matter. They're just there.
They should just be gone.
I don't even know if they should just, well, maybe they should just be gone for the sake of novelty, but I would like it if Shiraz learned that she was a cloner and Dylan learned that she was an excite to buy, or just something so that this thing that we spend so many pages on in Act 1 pays off by the end.
Maybe they can just be scaled back. Like, so maybe it's not full mind. Like, okay, so the Centauro one needs to go because it's just broken. But maybe, like, the regular 7 powers can just be scaled back a bit. So maybe Excite to Buy is not, like, literally control people to buy the product that you've been assigned to tell them to buy this week. Maybe it's just, like, you know, a little bit of influence, a little bit of suggestion. Sure. Similar with the Seduction one. Maybe the Chameleon one is just, like, you can rearrange your facial features somewhat. You can slightly get taller or shorter, but you can't just, like, become an entirely different person.
I feel like that would be a lot more thematically solid as well, because it brings into the equation of whether or not people are conventionally attractive, which would highlight the value of Shiraz, Piper, and Dylan, at least if nothing else. God, you could really just start anywhere with these powers. I'm struggling for words here.
Yeah, they're such a quandary because, like, they're front-loaded so much, like, they're given so much emphasis, and they seem like they're really going to matter, and then in all the circumstances where they would be useful, they don't feature.
Right. And that accusation could be leveled against the almost entirety of Modelland's landscape. Why are there magical cats? Why are there funhouse mirrors that make you look ugly? What's the point of any of the stupid classes that they go to? Yeah, it's kind of just falling apart in my hands at this point.
Kind of feels like trying to pick up a sandcastle a little bit.
Right? It's just sad because, like, so much of this is intentional. All of these magical powers are based off of things that the author implicitly has experience with through modeling. So it bothers me so much that none of this comes back.
I think it might just be a side effect of this being Banks's, like, first and, like, everything novel. You know, this is probably the novel that she should have let sit on her hard drive and that she could have then drawn ideas from into their own discrete projects. But instead, we got every fun idea she ever had, because I bet on some level she was worried that, like, the rest of the series never would come out, you know, that it wouldn't sell or that she would lose steam or something. So some part of her, I could imagine, was like, I got to get everything in this one. This one has to be good, because if I might never get another chance.
Sure. And I don't think that she even got her second chance with this one, because 2011, it's 2024 now. Her author bio at the back of the book says that she's working furiously on the new Modelland, and that's not come out. So here we are, I guess.
I don't know if she has the same level of cultural relevance today that she did almost 15 years ago. I genuinely don't know. I mean, like, I've never watched America's Next Top Model. No. I've never really been exposed to anything that she was majorly involved in until this exact moment. So yeah, maybe she would like to get it out still, and she's just having trouble, like, finding the enthusiasm, which I hope is not the case. But maybe we'll see the sequel someday.
One day. 14 plus years later, we'll get the sequel to Modelland, and everything we say will be completely null and void.
Hey, you know what? If other people get to wait, 15 years for the last A Song of Ice and Fire book, then we get to be excited about the next Modelland coming 15 years later.
I don't know. It feels like a million. I've given up on A Song of Ice and Fire. A Song of Ice and Fire ends with A Storm of Swords. I like A Feast for Crows, but it's fan fiction. Everything else, it doesn't matter. There's never going to be The Winds of Winter, and there's never going to be Modelland 2. So that's just the reality that we have to live in.
That just means that, like The King in Yellow, we have to write Modelland 2, and we have to write Handbook for Mortals 2.
I don't want to do either of those things. Someone else can do it. I give you full license.
But by we, I mean the SBU English Club. I don't mean you and I, Andrew.
Oh, yeah. Us as a collective of authors who have never heard of us and or hate us.
Yeah. So there's this one character called Chaste that I don't think came up in your summary, and I'm glad that she didn't. Because I don't want to talk about her any more than I absolutely have to, because it's just like upsetting. But basically she, like the girl who's really hairy, is the butt of jokes because she is like too sexually provocative by this book's standards, even though she is not harming anyone and is, when read charitably, just doing the exact same thing that Creme is doing by participating in this wretched system to improve her circumstances and get into Modelland and succeed in Modelland. She is perpetually mocked by the book and all the characters that the book has decided are capital G good for like expressing herself sexually. And I just think that sucks. And I think it speaks to that like liberation for me, but not for thee mentality that I was trying to outline earlier, where it's like, you know, the characters who we have decided are the good ones, they get to do whatever they want. But characters who are too different, who are too loud in some way that the book has just decided suck or are annoying or are problematic or something, those characters are ridiculed relentlessly. And I think, of course, this one's especially insidious because it's like misogynistic, and that makes it suck extra.
Yeah. I do think that there's some kind of dissonance there because, again, she's just doing what you're supposed to be doing in Modelland, just saying the quiet part out loud. And that's really the long and short of it. I wish that more, I don't know, grace had been extended to her for whatever caused her to be the way that she is, or at least an attempt by Tookie to understand where she may be coming from, because she's just like, as I remember, Zarpessa's crony and doesn't do much outside of that, hence her villainization.
She and Tookie fundamentally have basically the same goal, which is to succeed at Modelland and like, I don't know, achieve a happy future for themselves.
Sure.
And Chaste just does it in a way that Tookie doesn't like. Like, again, she's not hurting anybody by, like, dressing skimpily and, like, being suggestive around the boys from Bestosterone. Like, you are allowed to do that at Modelland. Yeah. She is literally playing the game the same as anybody else, but, like, because it's sex, for some reason, we hate it. And I think that's just very lazy.
Yeah, I have to fall back on what I said about saying the quiet part out loud, because she's villainized for just admitting ultimately what Modelland is about. And again, because I think that ultimately this novel that we have here is fundamentally conservative, you're supposed to live within that contradiction. You're not supposed to either acknowledge it or do anything about it. You're just supposed to accept that as fact. And that's just another victim of that worldview that permeates this entire book.
That's true. The world cannot be changed. It's always been like this. It'll always be like this. The best thing you can do is tolerate it and try to get to the top.
Oh boy.
Speaking of toxic ideologies, there's this one moment where Tookie comes across as like absolutely deplorable as a human being, and I know that the book doesn't intend this. There's this scene where all of the Unikas are exchanging tragic backstories, and Tookie is the last in the sequence to go. And when it's her turn, instead of just telling her story like everybody else did, she like makes a big show of getting out her journal and reading aloud a letter that she wrote to herself about how much she hates herself and wants to end her own life. Yeah. And in response, everybody just like apologizes for sharing their paltry trifles. Like, how dare they when Tookie clearly has the biggest problems? How dare they even talk about or share what's going on in their lives, in their psyches? That doesn't matter. We all need to make sure that Tookie like knows that she's the best girl in the whole world and everything's going to be okay and everyone loves her. And it's like, it's so gross.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. I almost like blocked that out of my memory. It's just a byproduct of her being the protagonist. Her problems have to be the most important thing in the world. Her feelings have to define the entire thematic landscape of this book. And it just doesn't work. This is just an example of just the narrative bending over backwards to accommodate this main character that just isn't working, and I don't like the implications of that.
It's something that I think could be massaged out relatively easily. Like
So
you could keep this scene in and just tweak it so that it doesn't come across this way. I think it's mainly the apologizing to her and like acting as though they should not have shared their problems that creates this tension.
It's as simple as that. Like, a lot of the girls and the Unikas have very real, very genuinely expressed issues that are addressed at least in good faith, maybe not as strongly as some readers might want, but they're not waved away until the point with Tookie and her whole deal. So just not doing that would be just the exact answer to making this not be a problem.
Really, I just have like a couple of final thoughts as far as stuff that wasn't working for me goes. Not that anybody was asking, I'll say that it was around page like 150 or so that the just chaos and noise of the novel stopped being as impactful as it had been at the start. Like Andrew, I was very taken with the voice at the beginning. I loved this bizarre parodical world. But around 160, I was ready for the book to slow down for a minute and be grounded in something. We really needed like an Isla and Azul at the bar moment where humans are just talking, because after a point, like, it feels like the sugar rush has gone on for too long. Like, I'm starting to wonder if I took the forever weed, and I just need a chill out tent and an orange slice so that then the sugar high can continue and feel as intense as it once did. Because it gets sort of numbing in its current iteration.
Numbing is a great way to phrase it, because it beats you over the head. This book needs to be accordioned so fucking badly. It is unconscionable that it is over 400 pages as an ebook and 500 as a physical book. What is your page count?
Mine's almost 600.
Okay, yeah,
it is. It's like 570-ish.
That is inhumane. This book does not warrant that page count. I don't even know exactly what needs to be cut. Maybe we can get into that in suggestions, but something's gotta fucking go, because it is terrible. It is terrible. And yes, it never lets you breathe. It's always at this pace, and then it ends, and then it ends, and it makes you feel like you're out of breath for most of the time that you're reading it. And I just don't know if that's exactly the feeling that we're supposed to be going for here, even in, yes, this cartoonish, farcical world.
I don't think so, because that's a bad feeling, and I don't think this book wants to make us feel bad feelings. Speaking of things that made me feel bad feelings in this book, I wish that there was, like, an acknowledgement of trans people. Like, I know that the popular culture was maybe not there at the time the book came out, but like, we exist, non-binary people exist. I don't really love that Modelland is like this gender binaristic world where it's like a clear hierarchy where women are above men, but models still seemingly exist to like dress for and sell things to the male gaze, and the outside world doesn't really reflect this like quote unquote matriarchy, which is a term I hesitate to even use to describe Modelland. The whole thing is just very confused on the gender front, and that upsets me, not just because I feel like this book presents a world in which I'm not allowed to exist, but because I feel like it is ripe to include the exact kind of commentary that I'm looking for. Like, it's trying to make on some level a parody of like gender politics, like popular gender politics in the 2010s. And it like kind of fails on that front, which makes it extra sad. I guess I don't really need to say any more about it than that. It just doesn't succeed in doing this thing that like it maybe wants to do, but like maybe doesn't always want to do.
We're getting into authorial intent here, which is just going to be completely opaque, since one, we don't know Tyra Banks, two, neither of us knows Tyra Banks as a public figure. However, it's very South Parkian in the fact that it's just like, wow, isn't this really awful, while just being awful in and of itself. There's something in one of the songs that's about XX chromosomes, and that's where my even cis eyebrows raised. I was like, okay, so this is what we're doing here. Like, it feels very, very cisnormative. And again, this is an awful predatory society, so it almost feels like trans people were spared this horrible fate. But at the same time, I have to ask, like, where are the trans people? I don't know if that makes me sound like a Kelton College shit lib, but I do wonder, you know.
It's hard not to in a book that fetishizes gender, and I don't mean that in a sexual way. I just mean that, like, it can't get its teeth out of gender. Like,
yes.
It has such big feelings about gender, but I still feel like on some level it's like thrashing about, failing to know exactly what about gender it wants to express.
Exactly. Not knowing what it wants to express is the core crux of the issue there. There's definitely an issue being expressed. Like, there's a lot of stuff about the male gaze and female power within this kind of structure, but you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have this patriarchal society and this matriarchal magical school and then expect the two to marry in a way that's going to be thoughtful, you know?
Yeah, it's not going to happen on its own, that's for sure. I feel like this book just has such a deep anxiety about gender and gender relations, and it hasn't worked out like what it's actually anxious about.
That's kind of step one, is figure out exactly what you're trying to do or what you feel uncomfortable with, and then we'll work with you from there. But for right now, it's just...
If you, Tyra Banks, think there is a problem and you want to write a book about that problem, you first need to tell us what the problem is, and then you can start talking about like potential suggestions or tweaks or something like that. I think it can be described that simply.
But in speaking of potential suggestions and tweaks, I think we need to move on to some things that I think maybe could benefit either book 2 or a potential rewrite of this book to really make Modelland the book and series that it deserves to be.
Let's do it. Modelland isn't just what you see when you go from class to class, the doctor explained. There is a whole underground world here. Parts of it are still a mystery, even to me, and I was born here. But what about the Bellas? Tookie asked. Modelland has such strict rules for Bellas to enter. They have to look a certain way? Perfect? The doctor gazed at Tookie curiously. Do they? I have a confession to make, Missy. When I first saw you, I thought you were an injured new guru, not a Bella, especially with how you helped that sad, desperate girl. Plus, with your protuberance of a forehead and wild dual eye color and poofy hair, kind of like mine, well, you know. But word has traveled about the 4 interesting-looking new Bellas this year, so I quickly realized my assumption was wrong when I saw you were here with Piper. Oh, okay. I'm not really sure why I'm here either, Tookie admitted.
It's because you have tetanus.
All right, Andrew, what's top of your mind when it comes to thinking of little tweaks we could make to this very big book?
Well, not my real first point, but again, I think we need to just crush some of this. But this book is very weird. It's very cartoonish, it's very voicey, and it reflects a worldview that is almost completely alien to me. And I can't help but think of our good friend and fellow club member, Norman Bouton. I think genuinely, this isn't a bit, I think that Modelland could have taken a page out of Empress Theresa's book and made the Smizes a little bit more like Hal. Already, the Smizes possess some sort of rudimentary intelligence, and I feel like something could have been done to explore that a little bit better, if only thematically. Maybe there's a little bit of negotiation or getting to know your Smize before it really lets you go Super Saiyan. It's not like you just slap it on your face and then that's the end of it. Maybe different Smizes have different personalities and are tailored better to different people, and that can go into the body type diversity thing that we're going for in the theme here. it's a form of makeup, and surely a model's relationship to makeup can be personified. So just lean into that. Give us more. The Centuras are another example of this. They also kind of feel like Aladdin's little magic flying carpet or something. They have some level of just a HAL level of if-then intelligence, and just a scene more could have gone so far in making this world feel realer and making the magic feel cooler.
100% agree with all that. I think those are really, really good suggestions. Speaking of like kind of fantastical elements, I really want to know more about these like non-human species or creatures or characters that Modelland like took in allegedly at some point in the past. The doctor with the mop for a head that I think is called like a scrub or something. This is one of the rollerblading doctors, I believe, mentions that like people like them that were born quote unquote different were taken in by Modelland in some grand act of charity in the past. And I was kind of assuming that Guru Applause was like maybe also one of those people, but it's not clear to me if they even are people, like in the sense that they're human. I don't know if they're like mutants or if they are magical creatures, and I don't actually know that the book itself knows. No. But I would like it if it did.
There's just an immense gap there with how they're handled. There's all of these non-human creatures, and are they people? You know, like that feels so awful to say, but like Blagizards and face hand people. Is there a country of face hand people out there? Like there's so much that could be just done away with in little bits of exposition. Like, is everyone from fantasy France just born with a hand for a head? Like, it's ridiculous to me. And again, it's part of the tone, but that excuse can only get you so far at the end of the day.
Right. Because when things that are happening as a result of the tone or because they harmonize with the tone also create tension between like your suspension of disbelief and the narrative, then you still have to address the problem. You can't just be like, oh, well, it works on this level, so therefore it works universally. Like, if it's raising questions that distract the reader from where you want them to focus, then you need to change something to redirect their focus.
Absolutely.
You literally just call them mutants. Like, you can just say that sometimes because this is a weird world, people are born as mutants and then they go to Modelland.
It really doesn't matter as long as you do something.
I don't gaff how you do it, but you have to do it.
You're right. In speaking of something, and I do not gaff what, has to be done with Creme Crabat's relationship to Tookie. It is just too interesting for its own good. We've covered in the summary. There's these very warm moments where Tookie and Chris seem to have some kind of relationship to each other or some mutual understanding. And then out of nowhere, Chris is like, this isn't even my daughter. I'm going to sell her to a factory. And that's the end of their entire relationship. And something, God, anything, whether it's positive or negative, would go so far to making this feel resolved or making this feel like something that is a part of a book that is good. But right now it just feels like a patch job. Like there were too many contradictions, and then they just hung up lampshades until we have this weird half measure where everything is this kind of stalemate between Chris is a bad person and Chris is a good person.
It wants to have it both ways for sure. It's like, well, he has to be a good person so that Tookie can have this like meaningful relationship with her father where they bond over both being rejected by Tookie's mother, right? Like that's one big thing they have in common is that Creme fucking hates both of them. But then also he needs to be evil so that Tookie has a good reason to want to leave and not feel guilty about abandoning her family to go to Modelland. And so what happens is like this character just serves completely opposing roles in different scenes, and he comes across as like different people or like different entities sharing the same body. It's so disjointed.
I don't have a preference with how you handle it, just as long as you handle it. Like, I don't care. He could be a bad person who's always hated Tookie and yield to his alcoholism or whatever he's implied to have. Or he could secretly come around to Tookie and, you know, be a good father at the end of the day. I don't care. Just do it, and do it in this book.
Yes, I agree that this should all happen in this book. Like, their relationship can continue to develop across hypothetical books.
Sure.
Within this book, this definitely needs to be fixed, or at least like made clear, so we have a sense of what direction their relationship is going to be moving in. But for what it's worth, I think that he should be on some level a good father, or at least like trying really hard to be a good father.
Yeah.
Because I think that the story becomes a lot more interesting if Tookie has conflicted feelings about leaving for Modelland. Because if there is a reason, like any plausible reason that she might want to go home, there's real tension about her deciding to stay at every step. If she always has the ability to pull the ripcord, then she always has to resist that opportunity.
Sure.
And I think I mean, just fundamentally more interesting, to be honest.
And now that I think about it, there's no reason that we had this heel turn with Chris. Like, Creme could have just been like, well, I'm tired of paying for Tookie's upkeep, so we're going to sell her to the factory. And then Chris could be the one to be like, no, how could you? She's our daughter.
Could have done anything and did nothing.
Right.
Or you tried to do two mutually exclusive things at once and they've excluded one another.
Yeah, that's more accurate.
This is not going to be any surprise coming from me, but I really want to see the religious quality of the way that people conceive of Modelland, like, capitalized upon a bit more. It really, really shines through in the early parts of the book and then kind of feels like it gets abandoned. But, like, obviously Modelland being at the top of this shrouded mountain evokes Olympus. The way that girls are snatched up to it also kind of evokes, like, gods snatching mortals up to Olympus, but also like a Christian rapture.
Sure.
The fact that you can consume the right products and thus win the favor of Modelland. You know, you can be on trend and kind of achieve a sort of salvation. You can elevate your societal status even as a non-inhabitant of Modelland. You can make a pilgrimage up to Modelland.
Right.
That's very religious. These are all religious motifs, but they don't assemble into anything. These are just things that are there for the sake of there being a pattern, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know you haven't played it, Jay, but this is exactly what I was talking about with this being whatever I said, Candide meets Hollow Knight Silksong or whatever. But there's an element of that there that I specifically picked up on with the religiosity of Modelland. And it could be as easy as, what if people are lured into being manicants under the false impression that this is some holy act of service to Modelland, and they're happy to do it, and it's not like necessarily in Persimmon's case where you just choose it because it's better than going back to working in a factory, or the Bestosteros, the same kind of thing. Is they could view this as some sort of religious service rather than just their himbos, and they know how to build an arena, so they just hang out with them sometimes.
Right. It's also something that, like, alternatively could be, like, cut or just, like, rephrased or reframed so that the religious stuff is not there. If Banks, felt like that would be too much for one book, which I think you could argue would be the case. But it needs, like Chris, we need to decide one way or the other. Is this a religious thing, or is it not a religious thing? And if it is a religious thing, what are we trying to say about it? Rather
than being kind of even-handed like I was with Chris, I want to put my foot down on the religiosity thing and say that it has to maintain that. I think that there's just too much in the fabric of this book that invokes it, to the point where if you wanted to excise it, you're writing a different entire book. There's the fact that everyone's, like, fascinated with the obelisks. There's the ritualistic aspect of TDOD. We are too far in this direction, and that direction is too good, to the point where just lean into it more. That's the answer here. It's not like you're doing it in the wrong way. Just stop taking these half measures and really dive into what this vapid, horrible, fashion worshipping society would be like.
Yeah, I think that would be my preferred response as well. I think that fundamentally this is another case where the book's desire to be, like, funny and silly is getting in the way of its desire to be, like, a true expression of somebody's lived experience.
Oh, sure.
The tone and the content are not quite married to one another.
No.
In this moment.
Which is a whole other suggestion. The tone and the content are very rarely married to each other. We could really point to any scene and make that suggestion, but I just don't know. I feel like this needed another round of editing, like so many SBU books, to just really iron out some things that are, very disturbing, very harrowing, but then very well dealt with or done away with in a silly joke. Like, we're never on solid ground with how this book feels, and it's so easy for me to argue with myself about that, because this is a dream nightmare world where nothing makes sense and everything is made up. But at the same time, like, this is also a work of narrative fiction, so I do expect at least a little bit of consistency here and there, if not at every point.
Like, we need to know what the rules are and what the stakes are in order for us to actually care to a degree. One other place this manifests for me is, like, the book can't seem to make up its mind about who actually decides what body types and what products are desirable, because obviously the belladonna, one of her duties is to decide what is going to trend, but it isn't really clear to me if that means, like, she picks what she thinks should trend and then her marketing team tries really hard to push that to people, and it's not clear to me how that squares with the different Intoxabellas who have the ability to predict, I guess, with some level of certainty, what trends are going to be like in the upcoming seasons. And then there's also mention of these corporations that manufacture all of this stuff that are separate entities from Modelland, but interact with it obviously quite a bit in some capacity. Like we've said in previous episodes, I'm okay with this being a mess. Like, I'm not saying that I need a flowchart where I give the logic of how this bureaucracy works, and I'm not expecting to understand that it will work that way infallibly every time. If it's going to be messy, I want to know that it's messy on purpose, and that it's messy to, like, make a parody of the way that these conflicts of interest manifest in our world.
Right.
And I want to see the bureaucracy, like, failing to do the thing that it allegedly exists to accomplish in, like, a Kafkaesque way. I think we talked about this in Age of Scorpius recently, and also in the Cyborg Circus. Like, it's okay if the bureaucracy sucks and is bad and is illogical, but it needs to be illogical in a way that, like, comments on our world, is illogical in a way that is itself internally consistent.
That's a really good call out, and at the risk of redundancy with other episodes, I think we could do with some more bureaucracy here, because this is an academic setting and there's a board of directors as professors, but I could not, other than Gennaro and Nars, identify which of these professors are on the board, because all of them just do the exact same thing and teach the exact same classes, and none of them feel particularly more important than the others. And the belladonna, I mean, she has the statues that watch you, but she doesn't really there's no scene where she decides whether or not a model is kicked out of the school, for example, and Tookie doesn't have any meetings with her where she's like, you've been out of line, Tookie, and I've got my eye on you. Things that establish that there is a hierarchical power. We're always told that the belladonna has this absolute power and she's this taste maker, but I struggle to find anywhere where this comes into any meaningful play.
If you're going to be skeptical of institutions, then, like, be skeptical of institutions. Like, actually do the thing that you keep saying you are doing.
Right. Yeah. Do anything in the world other than make Tookie sleepwalk. I don't care what it is. I don't care what. Maybe she's just like a naturally inquisitive person and can't help but go to places where she shouldn't be, and that's how she ends up in these places. But God, do I hate the sleepwalking trope, and especially the fact that it happens 2 times in the entire narrative and never again and never before.
It also compounds with, like, the relative, like, placelessness of the book.
Yeah.
It's already so hard to tell, like, what physical settings look like or feel to be in.
Yes.
And then when we also exist in this world where you can be injected with a forehead serum that makes you, like, mass hallucinate, there's 17 different times of hypnosis running around, and most people in the narrative have access to at least one of them. And there's also just regular nightmares. When a character is like sleepwalking and they wake up in a new location, I have no way of knowing if this is real, how important it is, if it's not real. It's so confusing in a way that it doesn't want to be confusing. Like, obviously it wants to jar us by having Tookie be in a new location very suddenly, but like, it also definitely wants us to know that this is real and like she could be bodily harmed, like, right, so that we care about the drama of the situation.
And it just doesn't come together. It's just it's a cliche. It's one of those like TV tropes, sleepwalking things, and anything in the world would have been better, even if it were happenstance.
I don't know that it works like that. Not that,
Probably
fiction
not.
has to mirror real life, but I'm sure that there are people out there who suffer with sleepwalking and they would like to see that represented in a way that doesn't turn into like a plot contrivance.
Sure, yeah, and it's another just like cartoonish thing. Like, I've seen sleepwalking in cartoons, but I've never encountered sleepwalking in my real actual life or any sort of non-fiction that I've ever consumed.
Yeah, same here.
So I've definitely alluded to this before, Tyra, but my ultimate suggestion for this entire book is write book 2. Like, so much of what we're talking about, all of these unended threads and leads that are buried and characters that don't make any sense. There's all that stuff about Lizzie that never goes anywhere. I have a modicum of faith that this was intended for book 2, so it would shut us both up and end any accusations against you that would be unfavorable, to just show us where you're going with this. It's again with the Hunger Games thing, like in Catching Fire and Mockingjay, that's when the real revolution occurred. I can allow myself to give you this book to establish what this world is and where we're at, but alone, I just really... I can't say that we're going anywhere. It feels so stagnant. It feels so conservative. It feels so dreamlike that I just wake up and I forget about it. And I don't think that should be the ultimate fate of any work of fiction.
Is this really the best we can hope for? That like we will be the chosen one who is beloved of the system and just like be by chance in the right circumstances to be snatched up to glory? Like, is that really what this book wants to leave us thinking about? That's so sad. Like, it's great for Tookie and CL, but like, what about literally everybody fucking else?
Right? Literally anyone in the entire world. All of our friends that we've abandoned to go on this magical journey. If we are going to make a meaningful critique of this book, we need to understand everything that this was supposed to have been. So do it, I guess. I don't know why you never did. I never followed the publication cycle of this. I'm sure reviews even in 2011 weren't good, so that might have been what put the kibosh on that, but it just feels like such a gaping hole. CL then grabbed Tookie's chin hard. Listen to me. You're different. Way different. You know that. You're going to experience lots of cuts and slices here, but you better suck it up. The girl who is sucking your blood is hurting way more than you. Never stoop to her level. Tookie nodded, squirming as CL's sharp fingernails dug into her skin. She was happy CL was giving her advice, but also a little scared. Suddenly, CL released her, pushing her forward. When Tookie turned, she saw that the shackles had appeared on CL's wrists and ankles. CL staggered backward and fell into the zip-zap.
Well, Mrs. Banks, I may be out of suggestions, but a good friend of mine, the Tarot, has some ideas for where we might take things in book 2. So if I may, I would like to draw a couple of cards to give you some ideas for where to go in the sequel, just in case none of what we've been saying has been doing it for you. All right, here we go. First up, we got the Six of Swords. That's a little bit of a bummer. Don't like to see that, but since we're talking about a story, a little bit of conflict might not be such a bad thing.
No.
Sometimes with this card, people will talk about, like, travel. I think this might be a weird solution considering where the first book ends, but I think it could be interesting if Tookie goes on like a little, I don't know, spiritual quest by herself away from Modelland to get some perspective. Maybe we pick up book 2 in a place we don't expect, somewhere far away, somewhere that we depict tastefully and with respect for the culture by which it is inspired, but somewhere far away from Modelland, now that she is in this position of unique privilege where the person that scouted her to attend the school runs the school and is also her best friend and maybe her surrogate mom. So let's say we start the story somewhere unexpected. What might happen next? Okay, the lovers. Great. I love this. Because you know what I don't love? Is Bravo. I think that maybe in this new place, Tookie can reflect on her current relationship and maybe fall for somebody new. Maybe this doesn't have to be a lasting relationship, but maybe she has an experience with somebody else, and she realizes that Bravo is like fine, but she could do better. So when she returns to Modelland, there's now some relationship tension because she has a little bit more life experience. I think that could be interesting. Next card, and I think this will be the final card for now, is the Page of Swords. This is a really good card for a book that's set at a school. I think we should see some more studying in book 2. I want the characters to like struggle with the schoolwork some. It's clear that you love Harry Potter, and something that always happens in Harry Potter books is the characters like have antics that involve having to do homework. I think that playing around with the characters in some more mundane scenarios like that, which can certainly be infused with magic given like, you know, the book that this is, I think that would give them time to actually like be people. A lot of what we see from Shiraz and Dylan and the rest is like they react with their one personality trait when Tookie says something, right? So like Tookie does X and then Piper does the smart response and then Dylan does the snarky response. If the characters are actually getting to like do more together, maybe we can flesh that out a little bit, and they can have a little bit more to them than just these, again, like character stock archetype responses. So that's just a little something to get you started out, Tyra. I hope that this was helpful.
I've always been so helped by your tarot card readings. I think it's such a fun little mechanic to really dive into what a book can be or become, using these dumb little cards that you have as like a framing device for it.
Are they so dumb though?
Oh, sorry.
That's
these magical arcane arts that you're using. I really hope there's book 2. I loved this book. I'm sorry. It's so fun. It is a real person's intentional effort to express something that went on in her life. There's characters in it. There's pathos. There's twists that are sensical, unlike we have in like Lightlark or whatever. I actually understand and appreciate what's happening here. It's just, this is a breath of fresh air, and I'm just so glad that Tyra Banks was so generous as to share it with us, the SBU English Club, and ask us directly for feedback and advice on where to proceed and how to edit this book.
Well, you know what? You asked for feedback, Tyra, and you got about 4.5 hours and counting of it, at least in the unedited version, so a finger curled on the monkey's paw, I guess. This is going to be a lot for you to think through. But you know what? The good thing about recorded audio is you can go through it as many times as you like. So enjoy.
And speaking of recorded audio, we are so glad that you guys hung out with us. Again, we are the SBU English Club podcast, the best critique group that nobody asked for. I've been Andrew with my friend here, Jay, and we take the books that the internet has written off and give them a fair shake in the marketplace of ideas and books. Before we go, we want to thank our sponsors who have made this episode possible. We really don't know what we would have done without them. The Order of the Orbfox tier of our supporters actually votes on our next books, so it's because of them that you got this episode today. And I got to learn how vocoding works in Audacity, so Jay's going to be really weirded out about the way that I present this. Hey guys, it's SBU, and we would like to thank OOOOH, that is Drinkolith, Pink Catsy, as Simply FJ, and Aiden Feldkamp, Red Spooker, Mins, John Pickin, Window, and Zubin Kane, Courtney Hallucigino, Beeps, Dangerous Butter Knife, Flamingo Sugar's wife Marfin's right, Tuskin Nakinas, Goldfish PD Neo Turnips, Ruth G, Lisa Does, Mikhail, Gabrielle, Lisa, Charlotte, Cosmically, 3 Duncan Daggers, Andy V, Mel, fuck, how does it go?
I feel like I'm being hexed right now. I'm very afraid.
I'll leave that in as an interlude. Kira, Lynn, Doe, Park, Piggy, Daisy, Astra, Max, Theru, AE, Lucille, Alley, Mia, Baby, Rumi, Ace, Anthony, LB, Arthur, Clybourne writes, Merka, Jenna, Bunny, Junie. Our English Club members who are also pivotal in this thing of ours are Natalia, Mallard Griff, Milo is Tired, A Marvelous Geek, Will, Peach, Navari, Renee, Constant Blade, Astro, Corrupted Luna, Gecko Jesus, Ennui, Lolel, Ta Ether, Eris, Grossberg Law Offices, Sarah, Rue, Amir, Jesse V, Sody Pop, SS, Radiancia, Evil Red Flame, Rona, Amanda, Talia, A Million Billion Snakes, Angie, and I Write Lightlark Fanfiction. Thank you guys so much for supporting. I think I already said this, but we cannot do this without you guys. You guys are pivotal.
Yay.
You guys.
Thank you for being club members.
Yeah, thank you so much for being club members. But this is all we have for you guys tonight. Tyra, thank you so much for joining the English Club, and we will see you around campus.
I'll see you around campus. Just months ago, Tookie would have dropped CL's hand in an instant, too afraid to face the unknown. But now, the idea intrigued her. It would be an adventure, an experience, better yet, an experiment. She clutched CL's hand hard. I want to go with you. Are you sure? Hells yeah, Tookie yelled. All right, girl, let's do this, CL shouted. She arched her back and their bodies pivoted and shot toward the ground with breakneck speed. The wind snapped through Tookie's hair. She felt the skin of her cheeks pressing back as they gathered momentum. The cemetery loomed closer, closer, so close that Tookie could read the names on the graves.